Pretty good, Lori.
All right, it is 5:30 and I will call the meeting to order. Alicia, would you do a roll call, please?
Yeah. Lacey Oster? Here. Cherie Link?
Here.
Michelle Lusha?
Here.
Bruce Blargen?
Here.
Lori Blargen?
Here.
Matt Foucault?
Here.
Marge Below?
Here.
All right, our district mission: together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Cherie.
I'll second.
And a second by Matt. Any discussion? All in favor then?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comment then. I have 3 people who notified me that they would like to make a public comment. Mr. Brad Nimick, would you like to begin? And would you state your address for the record, please?
What address? I'm sorry. Brad Nimick, I live at 610 Hudson Street, Somerset. I have 2 purposes, there are 2 things to address. It's been an emotional time the last week around Somerset, very, very emotional. And I know that on the agenda, and I appreciate some people coming here to speak tonight, represent their companies about looking at replacing Mark. And I just asked that the district, I saw on the bottom of the thing, I thought it was informational, but I see that as a possible action thing. And I just hope, when I always taught with the attitude, I over E, not E over I. Keep your intelligence over your emotions. And I just think right now we're still kind of in an emotional state. So I understand, listen to them, and I realize that some of them traveled some distances. But just let's take some time and think about this and sort through this before we go and do something. This district's been very important to me. I've been involved with it. Well, I haven't for the last couple of years, but I've spent 30 plus years out here. So just take some time. I don't know if it's something we have to go, make sure we're dealing with it intelligently and not emotionally. That's all I ask. Because it is very important to me. It's a very important part of life of my family as well. And also, I just need to tell the board I can't appreciate everything that Mark and Shannon and Trent Probst did to help take care of this with the Larsons. There are no words, and I'm never usually a loss for words, but I'm at a loss for words because it just, and they did anything and everything to help that family out. So just think with your heads, not your hearts, and make sure we're doing the right thing. Thanks. Can I leave now? I spoke.
Thank you. John Montana?
You know what, after that, I don't have to say anything. That's exactly why I was here, with what happened in our community. And I just hope you as a school board can sit back and look at this and look internally or whatever. And it's a hard time in the community right now.
Thank you. Mr. John Melvin?
No, I think it was said enough too. I could stand up, but I could say something also. I spent a lot of time with the man that we just put in the ground the other day, and I think that he had a lot of values, and everything that he coached and did was about value and about life. And that I try to model from being taught by him and also being coached by him. Pretty much a legendary person, and I would like to see, he thought very highly of some of the people in this community that we already have here for some positions that might be looked at. And I think internal candidates should be looked at too, very strongly, because I think we got some strong leaders in this community, and we have some strong professionals that are at this district currently. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, those are all the cards I had, and there was another comment submitted in writing, and I'll be forwarding that to Alicia so it can be attached to the agenda. According to our policy, that's the process that we use for people who submit written comments.
So you won't read off the...
We don't read them out loud, but we'll attach it to the agenda so everybody can read it.
And there was only one written.
As far as I know, yeah, that's the only one I'm aware of.
To be read at the meeting, or to be shared.
All right? All right then, the next item on the agenda is the personnel update, and this was requested to be added for action. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel update as presented.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. And is there any further discussion on the personnel update? I'd just like to offer my congratulations to both Debbie Stevens and Judith Young. Debbie's been with the district for 18 years, and Judith not quite as long, but they've been both wonderful, valuable employees. So thank you. All in favor then?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Then, Dr. Johns, would you like to begin your presentation from School Exec Connect?
Well, first I want to thank you for inviting me to come back this evening and meet with all of you as to be considered to do the search for your new superintendent. And I want to say, we, Ken and Dave and I, want to offer our condolences to you. I was a superintendent in a rural district. Coach Larson is the premier example of what a coach can be in a small community, to kids, to families, in the district, and you become like family in a small district, and then to the whole community. So we want to offer you our condolences, and we understand how difficult a time this is. And in view of that, I did not put together a fancy big presentation or bring the one that we have. I thought I'd do it a little more informally, and I have 2 sheets of paper for you this evening. I'll introduce myself a little bit so that people know who I am. I'm Antoinette Johns. I'm a former regular education and special education teacher. I was a school psychologist, director of special education in a large intermediate school, District 916, right across the border. Quite a number of Wisconsin students came to our programs for severe disabilities. And then I was the superintendent of rural Minnesota, Mcgee, Minnesota. We still own a home there and spend a lot of time there. And then I was superintendent of Brooklyn Center School District for almost 10 years. I was also co-owner of School Exec Connect for a number of years with Ken Dragseth, and we sold it to 2 people within our firm. And when you speak of ethics and values, we sold it only to people within our firm because we wanted to maintain the values and ethics that we believe in and the high integrity that we've held in the business. I have personally led or been in over 60 searches in Minnesota, Missouri, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. Ken Dragseth, who will be another partner here in the search if we are selected, is the past superintendent of Edina. He spent his entire career there and went from teacher to principal, curriculum director, assistant sup, and then superintendent. And he's done well over 65 searches now, and would be a part of this one. Dr. Dave Clough, he is one of the founding fathers of our firm when it was begun 17 years ago with Linda Hansen. She was the president, and she called him and a couple of other people to start the firm. And he has done, he's lost count, he has no idea anymore, way over 80 searches in his years with the firm. And he's a current, past superintendent in both Minnesota and Chaska and in Illinois at a high school district in Illinois. He now resides back in Minnesota and works with us a lot because all of his kids moved to Minnesota and grandkids. And as Mark just said, he has a new grandbaby, and that's quite a draw, grandkids are, as I know. Our firm has been in existence for 17 years. We've done over 500 superintendent district administrator searches. We mainly are in the Midwest, but we're a national firm. We do them on the East Coast. We've done them in many other states, but mostly we concentrate in the Midwest, about 10 states. We have currently 9 of our consultants that live and work in Wisconsin, and Ken and Dave and I have done the western border, several districts in that border. In the 55 searches that we've done here in Wisconsin, all of our superintendents have been offered multiple contracts. Also, we have done many searches in Wisconsin and across the country for other administrative positions in the school districts. We not only help to find superintendents and other administrators, we do coaching of staff and administrators to build leadership. We often do it as a request of a district, like I'm currently doing right now with someone. And then we also help with strategic planning, setting goals, etc., especially setting goals when you have a new superintendent. We've helped in a number of districts to do that as they set up their start with the district for success. To move into the values of our company, I gave you the credo. Our company has had a credo that was created when we started. And I'm not going to read this whole credo, but I am going to speak to it for a moment. Our primary responsibility, we believe, as a search firm, is to the students. All of the students in the district deserve high-quality education. And we believe it's our responsibility to find the leader who can actually help to forward the district to meet the students' needs, so that when they want to make choices at the end of their school years, they can make the choices they really want, and they're not deterred from options available to them. So our first obligation is to students. Our second responsibility is to you, the Board of Education. And we want to assist you in finding leaders for the school district, and we want to provide high-quality consulting services to you at the same time. And we believe that our contact with boards has been significant enough that we've been invited back to over 20 searches just in the state of Minnesota, our team, to when a person has mainly retired. A couple have gone on to bigger districts, but mostly the candidates that have been placed have retired. In our search work, we have never had a surprise about a candidate because we do our homework on vetting them. We vet them through computers and Google and all of that. We check newspapers. We call people that they give us as references, and we tell every candidate, before we take you in, we'll not only talk to people that you gave us as references, we will talk to people that we know you that you didn't give us, so that we are not just going down a path that a candidate might send us down. And then we have a responsibility to candidates. And the most common piece of feedback that we actually get from candidates is that we pay a lot of attention to them. They know what's going on in the process. They know what's the next steps. We prepare them. We give them written materials as far as schedules and all of that. We also vet internal candidates the same as we would vet external candidates, unless a board gives us any other path to follow. So we believe that we have an obligation to candidates. And for example, sometimes when we interview a candidate ourselves to consider taking in, we will do some coaching about what we feel they need to do in order to be prepared to be a superintendent when we don't take them in. We'll give them some coaching to help them grow. And then our last responsibility is to the members of our firm. We're a pretty close-knit firm, and we talk to each other regularly. And we will use each other as checking on references and to gather input on possible candidates. We have 60 consultants in School Exec Connect that we can contact and work with regularly. So that's a little bit about us and our beliefs and values. And we're known for sticking to those values. There's 3 phases to a search process. The first phase is to gather input and to come up with a profile. That profile we would ask you to put on your website to tell the community and the staff and everyone what it is that you're looking for as far as experience, qualities, characteristics in your next superintendent. And to gather that input, we meet individually with board members, with your current superintendent, anyone else that you suggest to us that we should meet with individually. And then we generally meet with what we call focus groups. And those will include district leadership, teachers, your non-certified support personnel, community leaders, parents, and sometimes even separate, if you have a large senior community involvement, we'll meet with senior groups in a way. We'll meet with any group that you ask us to meet with. But we also always ask to meet with students because we think the student voice is important. And so we will meet with high school students for sure, and we often will be allowed to meet with middle school students to gather some input. It's surprising the high quality, to some people anyway, the high quality of input that you get from students and the daily level of concerns. We were just in a district where we met with students, and it brought to light some issues that when we talked to administration, they hadn't known about. And so students are open and honest with you if you listen to them. So when we get all that input, we put it together with an online survey input. And that online survey is through SurveyMonkey. And I looked at your district student composition. It's about 10% Hispanic. And we have 7 languages, and Spanish is one of them for the online survey. So we can gather input from almost any community group that you have, and or create a document that will allow us to do that. So we can put that online survey up in Spanish and English and gather input, and that is a separate report to you from all of our focus groups and individual meetings. And then we combine all of that into what we call a profile, and that profile we give you, and then you can work with it. And what typically happens is there's some editing done by the board on it. Sometimes we will have missed a skill or something that you really want and need in the superintendent, and we can add that. It's a draft document when it comes to you, because it's your document when we get all done. And you approve that either by consensus or formal board action, and then we post it on your website for everyone to see, and we give it to candidates. And then that takes us into the next phase of a search process, and that's the candidate recruitment phase. In that phase, we advertise. And we've used WeCan here in Wisconsin to gather candidates, and then also send them to our website from there. We also recruit, and we're known for recruiting. There's a couple of searches that we've done recently where 3 of the 5 candidates that we took to the board, we recruited. So we're known for really recruiting people, and we don't have what we call a stable of people that we think are good. What we really truly take different slates in to each place. There might be a repeat person or two, but there's hardly ever. And we are very committed to finding the person that matches the profile that you need. In that recruitment process, we can advertise on the American Association for School Administrators website. We recommend usually that be through the web, and that's like $490 for a whole month. And then we advertise in any other way that you want. Your Wisconsin Association for School Administrators, the Minnesota, there's quite a bit of border crossing. And so we usually try, if we're doing one in Wisconsin, to advertise it in Minnesota as well. And we often advertise in Wisconsin for some of our Minnesota jobs. We check references very carefully, as I said before. And we also attend many state and national conferences as consultants. So we're meeting with people who are currently in leadership roles and watching them as we go through the processes over the year. The next part of it is where you have to do a lot of work, and that's the interviewing process. And when we get to that process, we would come and spend, one of the things that we have to do right up front is to set the agenda as far as the schedule that we would follow for dates for all of this process. And we would need to set up how you want to operate the process. We're well aware and have done it many different ways in Wisconsin, that you can do it behind, in a closed session. A lot of it has been able to be done that way. We recommend that a portion of it, at least at the end, be done in public, but we have had some boards choose to do the first part in closed session, and with a 5 to 7, and take it down to 2 or 3 people. So we would set that up, that process with you, and reach agreement on how to do that. Unlike Minnesota, everything has to be public. So every state is different in how we operate. And then when we get to the interview process, we would present to you 5 or 7 candidates. And if you needed to see more, we would talk about that as we're doing the planning meeting, to see how we pull out all the final people that you interview out of our pool. And when you interview that first time with the 5 to 6, 7, it's a very structured interview. And the reason for that is that every candidate is given the same amount of time, the same questions in the same order, and so that it's fair. And there's many legal and court cases that have caused everyone to be certain that they're following a prescribed way of doing it. Only the board asks questions in the first one, and only the board participates in the first round of interviews to narrow it down to 2 or 3. Then we suggest, and this would be, you can do it different. We've done it many, many ways in our history of searches. But one of the things we suggest is that when you have the last 2 or 3, that you have a day for candidate A to come, a day for candidate B to come, and a day for candidate C. And they actually get to meet with your teachers as a group, with the non-certified, with some students, with your administrators, community, and they get to ask questions of the candidate. And so during that process, they're also given a sheet from us, or it's done electronically in many places now and sent to the board electronically, with questions on it, like, how well do you think this candidate matches the profile? How well do you think this candidate will relate to the multiple constituencies of this community, the parents, the students, the staff, community leaders, the board? And then what do you think the board should learn more about? Or what do you think they should ask the candidate in their final interview? And in doing that, this second sheet I gave you summarizes all of this. And in doing that, then the board gets all that feedback, and the board uses that feedback to help them formulate questions for their last interview. That's not a structured interview. You can ask anything within the legal parameters of the candidate, and you don't have to ask the same questions of a candidate, because maybe candidate A had something in curriculum that you really wanted to hear more about. And candidate B had really resurrected the finances of a district, and you wanted to see more about that. But because they didn't say much about curriculum, you want to ask him that too. So it gives you as a board the opportunity to ask your questions based on all the written materials we'll give you about the candidate when we present them to you. Because you'll have a resume, you'll have an application they filled out, letters of reference, an introductory letter, etc. And then you'll have all the input from people, and you'll have your first interview to go from. Plus, you can ask us to find out anything that you have come up with that you think we should find out for you. So in that final interview, you get an hour and a half. It's up to you how long you want to spend with the candidate in the final interviews and what you want to ask them. And then you narrow it down. We will take you through a process. Each time you have to narrow the pool down, we'll take you through a process that allows you to get down to one person that you would like to enter into contract negotiations with. We're not having you make a motion to hire them as superintendent, because if you can't reach a contract, then you've got a superintendent and you have some obligations you could possibly legally. So we always say the motion is to enter into contract negotiations with your final candidate. I want to say one thing about what sets us apart, we believe, as a company. Several things here. One, our level of community and staff engagement. We will come back and meet with anyone. We went 15 times to one district because they had multiple communities they wanted us to meet with. And so we went back beyond what our original schedule was. That's, we're here to do the best job for you, the board and the community. So we'll come back as often as we need to. A recent district, we set aside 2 more days during the pandemic and Zoom, and things were being done by Zoom. We went ahead and added 2 more days and followed up with people in order to get as much input as we could possibly get for that district. So our availability is to meet your needs. We have our surveys in 7 languages, should you need them. Our preparation of materials, we will prepare our materials and bring them to you. Very seldom do we need to ask your administrative assistant to copy things for us and print them out. And then our commitment, it's not just a commitment of time, it's our presence. There's many firms in the country that will get you a slate of candidates, but they don't sit through every single meeting. We will be here through every single interview that is held. 1 or 2 or 3 of us. And the final nights of decision making, it's often all 3 of us that are here to facilitate process. So we are here, and there is never an additional charge for our time, regardless of how much time we spend. And we, as a result of all of that, we have not had any surprises on candidates in our search firm, and we're proud of that. So the candidates we bring to you are, first of all, people that we hold to have high character, integrity, and be committed to students and to your district. We also never recruit a candidate for the first 2 full contracts. None of our consultants, not just the 3 of us, but none of our consultants in the firm can recruit a candidate that has been placed for the first 2 or 3 contracts. Also, we tell them that they are not, that we expect them to stay at a minimum 2 to 3 contracts in a state. And that varies each state how many they are. We usually say 6 years minimum, we ask someone to stay. Because that's what it takes to really change things long-term so often, 5 years or so. So we try to get people committed. And we also push for people to live in the community, especially in rural. But we know you can't ask it, and it can't necessarily be demanded, but we do tell them in many communities that it is something that makes a difference in that community. With that, I'll open it up for questions. There's still, I think, about 25 minutes left.
I'll start. Can you talk about the internal candidate process? So over the last week, we've got a lot of comments from the community about an internal process. Is there benefit to doing an internal process only before an outside? Do you do it all as one? How do you truly vet internal candidates? What's your thoughts on that?
We've done all that. We've done, it depends, if you've got 3 internal candidates who hold the license or can hold the license by July, that's critical, one of the first criteria. Then if you want just an internal, we'll do just an internal if you've got 3 or so. If you don't have a significant number to really consider internally, we would pull them in based on them meeting the criteria and have them part of the pool of 5 or so people. We vet them just like we vet other people. So we'll call people and talk to them that they gave us as references, and we'll talk to people that we know them. outside of that list.
Do your fees change if we did internal only?
Oh, well, they could, yeah. It depends upon whether you want all of the in public engagement stuff.
Let's say
Which
we had
one
one.
is
Let's say
it?
we had one or two internal candidates only, and we wanted you to vet them and do the community engagement to really gauge, you know, if this person is held in high regard by the community.
Well, we would do the community engagement, which talks about quality, skills, and characteristics. It does not say that the community picks the candidate, the superintendent. You pick that.
Yep.
And we hold you to that responsibility, and we tell every group that interviews that they're giving input, but they're not making the selection. The board, if you look at Cheeseborough, a guy in strategic planning, he has a little chart that says those that are held accountable for the decision that is made are the ones that should make the decision. And in your case, you're held accountable for how well that superintendent performs, and therefore you make the decision. So we make that really clear, but we definitely seek input in the criteria part, and then match the candidates internally up to that criteria. So it'd probably still be very important, because it's been a number of years that Mark's been here and things have changed, and to do all of that community engagement with the online survey and the community meeting with us publicly first.
Right. So you would facilitate that. Give us a report.
And then we'd talk with you about whether you want to just see internal people. And yes, we have adjusted fees based on what we've ultimately ended up doing.
And with an internal candidate, do you help structure some of those first round interview questions?
What we give you is on that online survey, it has, sorry, I'm a little dry here. In that online survey, they are asked the question about the district. What do you consider the strengths of the district? And there's some cue things there for them, because when you're sitting at home alone on the computer, you can't always think of everything. So there's some little things to stimulate your thinking. Whereas when you're in a group of people, what you say might stimulate something for you to say in that. And so we try to stimulate that a bit. But every single question has a box on that online survey. And what we've learned is that box opens up until they're done filling it. And it can go quite a ways. And so in there, they also give questions. So we give you those questions to consider. We give you the questions from all of our group and individual meetings for you to consider. And then we have a list of questions that we put together. Some are ones that we think you should always, any board should consider, possibly, and others we add and change based on your situation here and your input that we've received and what we think might be critical for you to consider. So, and then you're free to create your own questions. You can always write your own questions or modify anything we give you. But in the end, we'll meet with you and we'll agree to 14 to 16 questions. And those 14 to 16 questions will be the same ones we ask in the first round of everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions?
That asked mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Marge? Sheree?
Yeah, we're good.
Michelle?
Good. Do you have other consulting services? So, you know, community, maybe not community engagement, but, you know, you have these 14 questions. I mean, is there a standard list of questions that you would work with us on, either developing or that you have that we could use?
We
Instead
have
of-
well over 100 questions
Okay,
in our own, materials, well over 100. We usually try to send you from our own materials anywhere from 60 to 70 some. And then you get these other questions besides. So you'll have a wealth of information to create questions from. And we'll guide that process and help you. Just like we'll be present during all meetings so that nothing illegal or unethical happens, not on your part, but sometimes we've had people jump in and do things that we say, excuse us.
So you brought that up, we can't ask people if they're going to live in the district? That can't
That's
be a
one of the
question?
questions you can't ask, but it is one of the things that we do work on and check out, that we do.
So I couldn't ask that in an interview?
No, but there's a couple of ways of handling that. We do work on that issue with people, as Mark can tell you, when he was looking at coming. We also tell candidates that usually your first question is, take 5 minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself, and what in your career and personal life has brought you to us tonight to be our superintendent. We tell them, volunteer up front that you're going to move to that community. Because otherwise, the whole time they're listening to you, they're gonna be wondering, is he or she gonna move here? And so we tell them, just tell them in your introduction. And some, we had one that did move to the community, but their child was in the senior year. So the whole family didn't move there until, the child graduated.
So you outlined 3 phases, pretty majority 3 phases, gather input, canvassing, recruitment, and interviewing. Do you have a breakdown of that for fees, or are you just kind of an hourly?
We're not an hourly, we're a flat fee,
Okay.
no matter how many hours it
So you don't break down each of these, like if we said, we're okay on the gathering input, hey, use these couple of recruitment things, and then we would we'd like you to assist us in this interviewing phase, so we don't break the law.
We have seen, let me see, in the recruitment phase, we will do all the recruiting that we can with what you want us to advertise and us seeking candidates. Because we want to be sure that we're finding the best candidates for you. And that we've gone through a significant enough pool of people to get the right ones. So we're not gonna cut down, even if you ask us to. I don't think that ethically we would feel comfortable cutting down on how we try to find candidates, how hard we work at that.
And
So that wouldn't save you. us
well, I hear
time.
that part, but then you also stated that we had to pay an additional fee to post, I thought, on a different
Oh,
website.
that's not our fee. That's AASA charges that.
Okay,
And it's $409.
so you would do recruiting, but then if we wanted to post on a different spot, then that would be above and beyond.
Mhm. And we, in our planning meeting with you, that's the first meeting we would have. In our planning meeting, we would talk about, where do you want to advertise? AASA is the American Association of School Administrators, that's national. If you don't want to post nationally, that's fine. We can post just regionally. And WeCan doesn't charge anything if you're a member of that group. Minnesota Association of School Administrators doesn't charge anything. Our firm charges nothing. And so you'd have quite a regional. And it would be on our firm's website, which a lot of people nationally look at. I called one person about as a reference not too long ago. He looked at our website, started looking at it, thinking about changing jobs, and he called me because he saw a job posted that he was interested in. So we have a lot of people nationally that just look at our website, and that gets a lot of play. And we send it out to over 5,000 superintendents through electronically.
So under your consulting fee, though, you do have a sentence that says, the consulting fee may be reduced and negotiated if the level of search services is reduced.
Yes.
So it's a flat fee, but it's not a flat fee. We could pick and choose
Well,
the level of engagement
Like-
if there's,
For example, if we did no engagement, that would take a couple thousand off. But I think the number of years that you've had here, you want some engagement from the community as well as internal staff. We also, if our fee, if you need to talk to us about our fee, we'll talk to you about our fee in general. We also don't like to not be present during interviews and stuff, because we think that It's support to you, it's support to the candidates, it's support to the people that are involved that might in the final days. But if our fee is an issue, we can talk about it a little bit.
So if we decide to go with you, we can talk contract. If we say, hey, we're gonna do an internal search only to start with, that's
We'll talk
when we
about
can,
it.
we can talk.
And one last question on timeline. What do you see as this timeline? I can't remember if yours is the one that laid out a timeline. One of the reasons I'm asking is, no offense to anyone here, but our board could change quite
When?
April.
Election.
Oh, well,
So we could start doing something and it could completely flip.
yeah.
I mean, probably not completely, but I mean, we could gain or lose some people starting in late April.
Well, it'd be very difficult right now unless you strictly did internal to do a search and end it by mid-April.
So obviously that's not.
Because we were thinking maybe end of April. When would it change, April 1?
Well, the election is the first Tuesday in April, and then by law in Wisconsin, the school board member gets sworn in at the end of April, so they take their first meeting at the beginning of May.
Well, hopefully, we've done expedited searches where we recruit candidates, et cetera, in 8 weeks. Whole process.
So we're already in May though, in 8
Well,
weeks.
we could possibly get it done in April, the last of April.
So then in your,
We
So your
could
opinion, is it
possibly
better
do that,
to-
we've done it.
wait or to push past that line? Or would it be, I mean, if you're expediting?
If we're expediting, I'd say get it done before. And we'll work hard to do that.
So
Set it up
you
for-
think you could do that before the end of May, or end of April, sorry?
Is it important to, I mean, school board elections happen every year.
Mhm.
Is it important to get this finished before an election?
Well, you have 7 board members.
Mhm.
How many are up?
3.
Three.
3.
Okay.
Well, then your board wouldn't completely flip. You'd
No.
have to count on the other 4 being. And once the people are elected, here's what we've done in some districts where there's going to be a changeover. Once that election's held the 1st of April, then you invite those people to everything that goes on after that in the process, but they can't vote. You know, but they can give you some input, and you can weigh that with what you think. And so we have done that in numerous districts, making certain that the candidates that got elected are part of the process. And in the front end, where we do that in public engagement, we had a district up north Minnesota that had so many people running for the board, we held an input group with just them. So we try to see that the people that are running for the board are included in the input. So no voice, nobody can say I didn't get to give input. And that's another reason for the online survey, is everybody can go do that. Everybody has the opportunity to do that.
You were talking about your thorough vetting of a candidate. How do you know a candidate has the ability to lead a district who needs help in the area of achievement, student achievement?
We've done lots of work in that area because it's a significant issue across the states today. And it has been exacerbated by the pandemic. So we haven't worked with a district in the last year and a half that hasn't had that as an issue. One of the things that we ask them to show us is data on what has happened with their student achievement. And for some, it's been pre-pandemic, and then what's happened in the pandemic and what they hope to recoup. But we have, I can think of 4 people that have been placed who have done a lot with academic achievement. And we ask for data, and we ask the people that we talk to, their curriculum directors, their assistant superintendents, community, what they believe the person has done in relationship to curriculum. And staff development to help staff to teach so that more students achieve closer to their potential.
Does having an internal candidate or a couple of internal candidates, does that harm a district's potential for attracting high-quality candidates from outside the district?
We just had a district where, and I'm thinking of some of my most recent ones right now. Well, in Missouri, I had a huge district and people thought that the 2 internals were going to get the job. We brought someone in from Chicago that I had known when they were in Minnesota, and then followed them, because there's people that you want to keep an eye on, see what they're doing in their career, because you see their potential. That person got the job. We just did a search where the board required that every internal candidate come in. So 3 people were in, and we brought 4 others. 2 people were moved up to the final stage, and 1 outsider, and the outsider got the job. So it doesn't guarantee that an internal will get it, but it also hasn't hampered our ability to say to people, no, you have a shot at this. You have this skill, and this skill, and we know that's what they're looking for. And so it doesn't always go to the internals. I'm thinking of 2 more searches right off the top here.
So as you're gathering information from the community and the staff and the board on what we're looking for in a candidate, do you ever have a time where the internal candidate doesn't make the cut?
Yes. Yes, that has happened numerous times. And there's been times that we did an only internal search and didn't take one of the 3 in ourselves. Said, we've had other times when we're not taking an internal in. But it all depends upon the person and what they've got for background, experiences, and skills. And if we don't take them in, we always tell them what we think they were missing. We always tell them what we think they could do, and that we would also be willing to help and support them to get the background or experiences that are recommended. It's hard to go from some positions into the top job.
How many candidates are you getting in your searches? My understanding is the pool of candidates has shrunk and there's a lot of openings. Are you still getting a decent number of qualified candidates applying?
Yes. We've seen that since the pandemic hit, that candidates have dropped out. You know, there's been less candidates. I think it's the I can't leave my district, we've got so much that's going on here with the pandemic that people aren't leaving. But now people are retiring as a result of everything that's been going on, I think. And we have 17 in a large district. We had 17 people and had a hard time narrowing it down to 7. We have another search that's closing in another week, and we have 12 in there. And we had 20-some in another district recently. So I think we're getting fair number of people, and we are working hard at recruiting.
Thank you. Did anybody have any further questions? I'm not sure. What time, how are we doing on time?
6:20. I mean,
Did anybody have any further questions?
Well, I want to thank you very much for giving me this time.
We do public comment at the beginning, but we don't ask questions during the meeting. I'm sorry, but I'm sure if you wanted to ask Dr. Johns a question, she'll be around.
Are they gonna tell the public how much it is?
Oh, it's $11,900, was it? Was it 11,900?
Yes.
There was-
And then our
There were
expenses,
written proposals submitted last week, and they're all attached to the agenda from last week.
and our expenses would not exceed $1,400. Our expenses usually don't reach the limit. We had 2 really terrible snowstorms one time and had to stay overnight rather than drive off the road like the semi did. And so that upped it once, but we're usually under, because we ride together.
Now you can stay with Lori. We don't have hotels here.
Okay. Nice
an
that
empty
you
nester.
volunteered her.
Yeah, well, I will extend the invitation if it's necessary.
Her door is always open.
She's closer to town than I am.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate the opportunity and hope to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to ask me something, I can.
No, I was just wondering how much it was.
And like I said, if we do something different, it's open for discussion.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
They put my table right in the corner.
So we had this conversation. If we don't have it there, then they can't see.
Oh, I know, but I feel really like trapped here.
You know, I attempted to move it and
Yelled
it
at.
was brought to light why the tables were
People don't need to see me, I'm telling you. I said, nobody needs to see me on TV.
Nobody sees me.
That's why you're where
Where's
you
the
are now.
camera? Nobody sees me.
I don't know.
So
Oh,
we
it's
gotta
pointing
move
up
back.
there? Isn't there one
Well,
pointing at us?
it was pointing to her while she was speaking.
So
That one
neither-
will spin to us.
Right, but,
So we're not on right now.
okay, so the little one on the corner, that's not a camera?
That's it, there's like a Google Meet, and somebody needs to see all of you on the other, I think Google Meet, that's what that's for. So
And what
that's
is
not-
that thing on the table in the 3 legs?
Microphone.
Sputnik here?
Yeah.
That's a speaker.
Oh. Well, here I'm learning all of our technology today.
High quality.
Tour of. Maybe it's in my hand. Every time you speak slow.
I have more if you need some. So you have quite a.
Take new notes and then make a new page.
He has some handouts,
Okay.
and he wanted to come in and see.
Oh, yeah, it would be a lot better if I put it up there.
Okay, so.
But I'll still give you the handout.
Alicia would like you to email it to her.
Okay.
That way I can pull it up here, and then also so you can see our camera angle here, so if you stay up by the,
Podium?
or if you want it right on the smart board as you're presenting, that's fine, I can do either one.
Okay.
You just gotta let me know,
And-
otherwise it'll be like this.
Have the presentation up there, I guess, with an email to you.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay, but you should only do that. Only do that. Is there anything more?
you.
I know it says Stratford on the second one. This is this report I want to show you. This is a report that I just did for Stratford. So I can show you a sample report or a live report.
Thank you.
Give you a copy of each of these.
And then, that right there, and I'll be here if you click it too hard. With that.
Good.
And then again, just let me know if you want it like this, or if you want it zoomed into your presentation.
On the presentation.
On the presentation, okay.
Oh, probably 4 or 5 years ago.
So I have to stand here for the camera? Is that where I should be?
If you, it's zoomed in on the
Oh,
Stratford
okay, so I can go wherever I want then?
Yeah, if you want, because I just have it zoomed in on that.
Perfect. Whenever you're ready, just let me know.
Everybody ready? We're a couple of minutes early, but if it's all right with the rest of you, we'll do it. All right, thanks so much for coming in.
You're welcome. So my name is Mike Ritchie. And I guess before we start, I want to express my condolences to Coach Larson and their community. Bruce and I went to college together, River Falls. He played football. I wrestled at the same time that we were there together. So I know it's a tough loss. He's just a great guy. So again, condolences to the whole community. So my name is Mike Ritchie. I work for HYA, Hazard Young and TL. Just a quick background. I've been a superintendent in Wisconsin for 24 years, retired 4 years ago. Spent time in Hurley, yes, Hurley, New London, Howard Somerville. The last 15 years I was in at Northern Pines and Eagle River. Retired 4 years ago, started working for HYA, and this is definitely search season. There's lots of openings out there. We've been extremely busy, and just a little bit about what we do, how we do it, and what makes us a little bit different from some other firms. So I know this is a great district. You have your report card scores are great. A lot of tradition here, a lot of history. Strategic plan shows a commitment to improvement. About our firm, we've been in existence for about 35 years. We have done over 1,500 searches. The past 5 years, we've done over 40 searches in districts of 2,500 students or less. We have about 125 associates across the U.S. We have 4 that are pretty active in Wisconsin, so we work as a team of 4. Usually we partner up with 1 or 2 per search. It just depends on what other associates have going on with their searches. We do a very comprehensive community engagement piece. The research and analytics I'm going to talk about later on in the presentation. That's that second report I gave you. We have an office staff, and we are very good with communication. We will get back to you immediately. So our office is located in Schaumburg, Illinois. But like I said, we have associates in just about every state. So we have a local focus with a national reach. We look at pools of candidates. We do heavy recruiting. We do headhunting. We will contact all the associates that are out there, especially in the Midwest for Somerset. We will look at doing a lot of community activity, focus groups, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And if you look at our references, we have a very high satisfaction from all of our searches. So one of the things that I do want to say is that, you know, we work for you, we support you. We will help identify the stakeholder desires, and so you want to get your community involved in what the search is all about. Transparency is the best way to approach it. We'll do focus groups, surveys, and again, I'll talk about that in a little bit. That helps us understand what the district is looking for, but what it does, it sets a roadmap for your new superintendent. It gives them a guide to go on once he or she is hired. And we will find you the best match based on the profile report. So how our search works is it's broken down into an engage phase, a recruit phase, and a select phase. This comes later. So the engage phase, we really want to understand your community. The recruit phase, again, we want to bring you a wide range of candidates. And then the select phase, we want to facilitate the process and find you that best match. If you do want coaching or mentoring, you know, down the road after someone's hired, that would be the transition phase. So at the engage phase, what we do is we start off by, I will interview every board member individually. So it's a phone conversation. It takes 20 to 30 minutes. We set it by your schedule. It can be nights, weekends, morning, afternoon, it doesn't matter, whatever is convenient for you. And we'll ask you 3 questions. We'll ask you, what are the strengths of the school district? What are the challenges of the school district? And every district does have challenges. And then what characteristics are you looking for in your next superintendent? So that's how we start gathering our information. And so we'll do that with all the board members. Focus groups, what we'll do is set up numerous focus groups across your community. So the givens are support staff, certified staff, business leaders, parents. If you, in our planning meeting, if you say, you know what, we want the mayor interviewed, we want the chief of police interviewed, we want some Rotarians interviewed, we'll do separate groups that are unique to your community. One thing I insist on, it's my favorite group, it's high school students. We get a lot of information from your high school students. So we would do a focus group with high school students, a select group of people. We don't want all National Honor Society students. We want a good cross mixture of your high school students and who they represent. Community survey, again, I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then we'll continue to do those focus groups. And then in the end, we put together a district leadership profile report. And that's the Stratford example I gave you. So you can kind of look through that one. But that's what a report will look like at the end of this engage phase. So again, we look at what we can best get that best match, how we're going to find that best match for your district. And then the survey, it kind of breaks it down into different themes. And again, this is just a sample, but what you have in front of you is the real survey that was just completed for one of our districts. This is not a Survey Monkey. This is based on facts. It's a tool that's based on research, and it again becomes a really good guide for your new superintendent. It looks for different themes. It talks about what the community is looking for. It talks about what the leadership skills that you want this person to have. It's a very good piece of information to have. So we talk about the recruit phase. What we do is we recruit a number of different ways. So one of the things, if you go to the HYA website, you'll see right now there's about 300 jobs posted. We post every position, it doesn't matter what firm, we will post all the jobs on our website. So that's one place where people go. Obviously, Wisconsin has a place. The WASDA website is a very good place to post a position. Anyone looking for a job in Wisconsin, we will post that job there. You are so close to Minnesota, we would highly encourage you to post with the Minnesota Association as well. And again, you'll get some applicants from Minnesota. I will personally reach out to all the Midwest associates. For some jobs, we'll reach out to every associate across the nation, but we would focus this search on the Midwest. That was going to be your best draw. And then I think the other thing that sets us a little bit apart right now is I'm currently doing the New Richmond search, and they're ahead of you in the game. Excuse me one second. So I'm going to be in New Richmond next week on Tuesday, presenting the slate of candidates. And we were instructed to bring them 6, of all the people that apply, to bring them 6. And we got a good problem, because we got 8 very, very strong candidates. New Richmond is so close to Somerset that the first thing I would do is one person is going to get that job. We know we're going to have 7 left in our data bank. So we're going to go after those 7 and say, hey, we've got another district a little bit smaller, but it's really kind of like New Richmond. And it's, so if you're a good fit for New Richmond, you could be a good fit for Somerset as well, if you're interested. So throughout the select phase, what we do is we look at, we screen every applicant. So everyone that applies, we will do a Zoom interview, 20 to 30 minutes with everyone. And why we do that is it's so much better to put a face with a person. And if you just go off the resume and the references, it can be hard to slate a group of people if you don't know them that well. And so by doing a Zoom interview, we get to know them a little bit better. So we will do a Zoom interview with everyone that applies. We say present the slate. What that means is, let's just say 20 people apply for the job. We normally, and there's a slide that will explain this in a little bit, we normally slate 6 to 8 candidates. We take the best of those people, 6 to 8, we bring them to you and we say, these are the 6 or 8 people that match your profile, your district profile. And so you will see every applicant. You'll see all the material, you'll see everyone's, and then you control the slate. We just tell you why we recommend these 6 or 8, and then you're going to ask, well, why wasn't this person included? So then we'll tell you, well, this person had a little issue 5 years ago, and here's what it was. Or this person does not match your profile report. And so we go through everything. At the end of the day, you can add anyone to the slate, you can take anyone out of the slate, you can say, I only want 6, we only want to interview those 6. And we always do 6, because if you include 6 in that first round, you do not have to release the names. And so people apply for jobs knowing that their name will not be released unless they're a finalist. Once you get below 6, then it becomes public. So then you have to release the names to the press or the public, anyone that requests. So we always take at least 6. Every state has a different law, so every state is different, but Wisconsin is 6 or more, the names are private. And the people that apply, when they apply, they will ask us, when will the names be released? So they want to keep that confidential until they're a finalist. We'll support the board for the interviews. We'll provide questions. We'll go through the procedure. We do a very comprehensive third-party background check if you would like to do that as well. This background check, it'll find all their financials, it'll go through, they make sure all their credits in college were legitimate. It's a very, very thorough background check. So, the transition phase, again, this comes later on. This is just if you want, you hire a new superintendent, brand new, or maybe someone from Minnesota, maybe from a different state, maybe you want some mentoring, maybe you want someone to coach, maybe you want some other service that we would provide if needed. This is the president of the company, his name is Mcgee, very big into equity, does a lot of presentations. He's involved in every search, and what I mean by that is I talk to him weekly, we discuss things that are going on as well. And I show this slide because the climate has changed, okay? And we're not seeing as many applicants as we would 5 years ago. You might have, if this job opened up 5 years ago, you could have 40 applicants. And what's happened, this was a couple years ago, and so those applicants, that's a pretty good pool of applicants. And then you can see how many we slated, and then you can see how many the board actually interviewed. So this is what we saw, a few years ago. And what I tell the board, yeah, we get fewer applicants, but I don't care about quantity. I care about quality. So my job is if we're gonna slate 6, my job is to bring you at least 3 or 4, or you have to have a lengthy discussion in closed session about which person you're going to hire, or which person is going to be that finalist. And if I can do that, then you're gonna have a tough decision. I wanna make your decision tough. I don't wanna just give you one person that will be fine. I wanna make it so you really have a good slate of individuals to pick from. So this represents what's out there right now. So this is jobs this year that we have done or are currently doing, and you can see what it's like. So less applicants, and we would not slate someone if we didn't feel they were going to be a good fit. And so so you can see, even though we had 11 applicants, we were able to slate 7 people. So what happens if we get 10 applicants and we only slate 4 or 5? Okay, names are public. But what we do is we will call those 4 or 5 people and we will say, hey, just so you know, we're not slating 6, we're slating 4. Are you still in? Because if requested, we'll have to release your name. And then at that point, they're gonna say, take me out or keep me in. So we're not gonna bring you someone just to fill a slate, and it's not fair to you, it's not fair to the candidate. So we wanna be honest and upfront about that. Again, this is just showing some of the searches that we've done. How we recruit, again, we've got a data bank of lots of applicants. If we slate 6, we slate 8, one of those 6 or one of those 8 is gonna get that job. So that 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th choice, they're still pretty darn good. And so we will look at our searches, what best matches Somerset. New Richmond's bigger, but it's your neighbor, okay? So a lot of people that apply for New Richmond, I tried to get some of them to apply for Monroe, and they said, no, I want the western part of the state. I want to be here. That's the same thing you're going to get. You're going to want to get people that are going to want to be close to the cities, close to Hudson, so you're going to draw from that type of pool. I would never try to recruit someone from the Green Bay pool or slate for Somerset. It's not going to be a good fit. So we kind of look at each district separately. Tentative timeline, again, what we would do if we are selected, we will have a planning meeting with either the board or a committee of the board. Districts do it both ways. And so we go through the entire schedule and we put dates in your calendar, and it's just nice if everyone knows from day one what that schedule looks like. We encourage all districts to build your website, put a page on your website that really spells out the search process, the timeline, how it works. Once we get down to the end, we post the final applicants, the resumes on that website as well, so your community knows what is taking place throughout that search. This is tentative, it's a draft, it's up to the board how you want to structure that timeline. But it just gives you an idea. COVID is out there. It's getting a lot better. So we were able to make adjustments as we went through. Now, a couple of good things that did come out of COVID. So we were in Whitewater doing their search when COVID hit. So we started everything face-to-face, ended up doing all virtual through Zoom. We did the Verona search, got them a great superintendent that was right in the peak of COVID. Everything was through Zoom. What we found was when we do these focus groups, we want participation. So if you were to host a parent focus group in this district, you might have 10 or 15 parents that might show up for that face-to-face meeting. We went to Zoom for a lot of our focus groups. You might get 30 or 40 parents through Zoom. So we're getting a better participation through Zoom. Some of the focus groups, yes, they're better to do face-to-face. If you do a business leadership, a lot of them will do a lunch or a noon business meeting. Those are better face-to-face. I love doing the high school students ones face-to-face. It's just, you get a lot more communication, and it's just, you can read what they're saying, and it's just nice to be able to do some of these, face-to-face. But some do work better with Zoom. A larger district with multiple schools, the staff ones work better in Zoom because they can do it right from their classroom, right after school. They don't have to travel to a different school. But if you've got your campuses right here, you might say, well, let's do one face-to-face and let's do one through Zoom. So you've got lots of options with the different focus groups. We kind of talked about everything that's in the rest of the slide already. Price-wise, this is going to be a little bit different than what was in the proposal. So I did take off $2,000, and I'll tell you why I did that. A couple of reasons. One, you're a lot smaller than New Richmond. So we try to give the smaller districts a little better deal if we can. The search, the time will take the same amount of time. Okay? The focus groups, writing the report, that will take the time. What will take less time for this search is the recruitment part, because again, I've got the data bank from the Richmond search and others as well. So that will take off some time. And so the survey, if you take the survey, the price is what, $16,500. Without the survey, it's $14,500. So what I tell most districts take the survey. However, if you just did a school perception survey, or if you did another survey, you may say, you know what, we've got the information we need already. We don't need another survey. In the survey, you can pick up to 6 subgroups. So what most districts will take in the survey for subgroups will be parents, certified staff, support staff, administrators, high school students, and then community. Kids, parents, people without kids in school. So be a parents with kids in school, and then community, people without kids in school. So those are the main 6 subgroups that people take. So again, that's up to you. It's optional if you take the survey or not. Travel expenses not to exceed $2,000. The more we do through Zoom, the less travel expenses that we have. I live in Wausau, Wisconsin. I would be coming from Wausau. It's about 2.5 hours from here. So there is the breakdown on the price. The background check, again, that's optional. If you have a person from Wisconsin, you maybe don't have to go with that elaborate background check. If you have someone from out of state, highly, highly recommend that background check, because that will find everything, and then you can see all the stuff that it finds. I'm not going to go through this, but it's in the presentation that you have in front of you. These are just some comments that some of our searches that we did. Very happy, satisfied with the end result, the candidate, and the process that they use. So this is the Verona board president, and I either led or co-led all these searches coming up. So we've got, actually I did not lead Green Bay. Pat did, my partner led that one. This is Green Bay. Whitewater, I led the little Whitewater search. This is the administrative assistant from Whitewater. We have to work very closely with the administrative assistant because they help us schedule the focus groups. They coordinate everything as far as, who's going to meet at what time. We provide the Zoom links, and we work together with that person. This is the person from, this is the person that actually I just finished up Lincoln, Nebraska. This person did not get the job. He finished second, but he was very, very happy with the search process. So a couple of the things that maybe I forgot to mention was the very first thing that we will do is have that planning meeting with the board. We'll make sure that the whole search is outlined. We'll make sure you get all your questions answered, and then we'll kind of set that course as to how everything works. Questions? I'm sure I missed something, but we'll pick them up as you ask questions.
You do some kind of background check, right?
We do, we
Okay.
do, yep.
Because it's that
No.
one you said was elaborate, but there is certain background check you do.
We'll do all the Google stuff, we'll do all the little local things that we can do. But what the elaborate one does, it goes through all their financials, were they ever bankrupt, did they ever file for bankruptcy? It finds everything, I hate to even, mortgage payments, were they late on their payments? I mean, it shows everything. It's a little intrusive, but when I saw the first report, I was kind of shocked, because you need to know who you're hiring. If they're gonna run a multi-million-dollar business, you need to know their background.
Can you talk a little bit about internal candidates?
Yep.
Candidates, we asked the last person too. You know, if we have 1, 2, 3 internals, how do you handle that? Do you do something separate for them before we decide to go outside?
The best way to handle an internal candidate is treat them like everyone else. And so, it does a couple of things. If you're going to do a full-fledged search, you want them participating like everyone else, because it's actually better for them as well, because if they end up getting the job, they went through the entire search, okay? So, some districts, and I'll give you an example, DC Everest, I live in Wausau, my kids go to DC Everest. They just hired their superintendent. Well, they're in the process. They have 2 people that were basically being groomed, being recruited by other search firms to apply for jobs, 2 outstanding candidates. So what they decided to do was not even open the search up. They knew they were going to hire one of those 2. So they did focus groups, meet and greets with just those 2 people, and then they interviewed both of those individuals. But they did not open the search up. Most districts will open the search up, and then they have to apply like everyone else and go through the entire process. So if you have an internal candidate and you're just going to be a principal or director, then what we do is they do not participate in the focus groups with the administrators, because it'd be a little bit awkward. And what we will do then is we'll do an individual, like we did the board interviews, we called the board members, we will do an individual one-on-one with that person, so they can still give their input on the strengths, challenges, and characteristics as well, so they have that involvement.
So if we want to do an internal process, you would help guide that?
Yes.
If there's a difference, we could do just internal?
Yes, if you would do the internal, I'm guessing you would not go through all the focus groups, all the other things that are involved with the search. But again, totally up to the board.
So do you have a fee structure if we went with that model first to see if we have an internal candidate that's qualified, and then if that didn't?
We don't have a fee structure, but what we would do is if you said, you know, give us a price for just doing the internal, the first questions I would ask you, I'm assuming you're not going to take the survey, I'm assuming you don't want the focus groups, that means you don't get the report, and so then we start going backwards. And then if you know, you could probably do the search internally by yourself without even hiring a consulting firm if you have, you know, 2 or 3 strong candidates. I don't think you would need a firm, but if you said, can you help us? I would say, sure, no problem, and it would be, you know, whatever the scope of the project would be. It would be a lot less than that, the price that was out there.
Because your focus groups are designed to identify our needs.
And what the strengths are, and identify the needs, and what happens then is, as you hire that new person, they take that report, and they know what to tackle first, they know what the issues are, they know what the long-range plan should be. They're not walking into something blind. Every candidate that's serious about this job, they're going to do all kinds of research on this district, okay? So they're gonna ask you some good questions. But by having that report, they're gonna know what the community has said about the district, what their expectations are. And then when you look at that, the survey, if you look at the bubbles, so it identifies how people feel about the district, and I can't remember how Stratford went, but most of those bubbles of the administrators or teaching staff is to the right, which means they feel that it's a really strong district. a lot of times the parents in the community, their bubbles are more to the left. So then what that tells us is, okay, there's a mixed message here. Why do the employees think the district is so high, but the community, the parents think we have work to do in these areas? And so the superintendent coming in knows that, and so one of the things they should tackle is, how do we bring those bubbles closer together? What is the real issue here? And they're gonna have to do some investigation, they're gonna have to talk to people, they're gonna have to figure out why is there that gap? When those bubbles are on top of each other, everyone's on the same page. And then that tells you that, and tells the new superintendent that things are gelling pretty darn good here. So, but most districts, the bubbles are out separated. Yes?
So you're explaining the survey, and in the presentation it said this is not Survey Monkey. You know, if you could just elaborate a little bit on that. And then one of the things, we did just do a survey as a district through school perceptions, but it didn't include community. It was parents and teachers, staff. It didn't go out as far as, so would that, and then as you're saying, you know, those overlap, would that be, I mean, I feel like it's important to get that community piece if we didn't include that on our last.
It would be very important to get the community piece, especially with the parents and the community. So what I meant by it's not a Survey Monkey, it's not a Google form. Those are just basically asking questions. People can, you know, submit them, and then you get a bar graph, or you get a pie chart or something that shows. That survey is norm referenced, research based, and so if you look to one of the last pages, you'll be able to see how everything kind of comes together. And what's nice about that too is you can actually see, you would be able to see how other districts stack up to Somerset and see where the disparities are. And you can see, let me show you real quick.
Sorry.
What we look, that's okay. So this right here, let me back up on my thing. So what you're looking for, if I can,
I can, just tell me when you want to place that.
they need to go where that survey sample was. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. Okay. So what this shows us is, so you can see the different groups up here: parents, students, administrators, teachers, community members, other. So in this one, it's what's important as far as what characteristics are going to be important for the next superintendent. So what you would really want to see is all four together. So when you have here, and then down here, here, and here, okay, they're not, each group is thinking something different. And so that's where we talk about that reference norm. You can see what they're thinking. We've had them before where all four, all the way across the board, are the same. Not to say they have to be the same, but if you want everyone on the same page, you need to know where people stand or how they feel about that next, what the vision of the district and what the characteristics are of that next superintendent.
How, you were talking about your research on the candidates, vetting the candidates. Yep. How do you know that a candidate has the ability to address student achievement?
A couple things. So one of the things that we do is, okay, we're doing right now the Cedarburg search. Cedarburg is a suburb out of Milwaukee. Their achievement is through the roof. So if you look at the report cards, every single school in their district significantly exceeds expectations. So when we vet our candidates, we have a couple people that applied. The first thing that we look at is we look at their school report cards. We look at their testing data. We see one person's an assistant superintendent in another district in Wisconsin. The test scores are so low. That person's not going to be a good fit in Cedarburg, just because of the achievement gap. And so we would look to see, where do you stand as far as your assessments, your testing, and then we'll look at, okay, where these people are coming from. We'll research their districts. We'll look at their test scores. It's harder if they're from out of state It's much easier if they're in Wisconsin because of WiseDash on the DPI website. So we can get all that information. So if they're out of state, we have to do a little more research to see where they stand. But when you can look at a district, you can go to their website. A lot of them, the accountability level, they have to post certain test items. So most states have that, so we can look at that. The first question we're going to ask the candidate is, why are your test scores so low, if they're low? How do you think you'll be a good fit in Somerset if your test scores in your current districts are low? Sometimes they can explain that. Cedarburg, for example, they don't have many subgroups. They have white male, white female, but not a lot of other subgroups, okay? So if you come from a real tough district, you may have a high special ed population, you may have, a number of minorities, you may have that achievement gap you can explain some of that stuff. And so you have to figure out, is that the reason, or is it just your curriculum is so poor and your instruction is so poor and you don't have the right people in place? So is that the person you want? So we dig and we dig, and we try to, we'll again, get you the fit that matches your profile.
So what if you have a district that needs to improve their student achievement?
So when we do the focus groups, that comes up all the time. So what we'll do is we'll look at, okay, what's your track record? So if you're coming from a district that's low performing, you didn't do the job there. Or it could be an assistant soup, or it could be a principal who only could control his or her building, but not the whole district. And so they may talk about what they did in their building to improve their test scores. So we'll look at everything.
I get, what I'm asking is, what if we are looking for someone who's going to be working on improving our student achievement? What kind of a candidate would you look for?
Coming from a successful district,
Yeah.
a very successful district.
So you'd look for someone who's already in?
Had that success. Someone who has had high test scores, someone who lives it, maybe someone that's got a curriculum background, instruction background, an instructional leader. You'll find people that are applying for superintendent jobs that are very financial background, okay? You'll find people that are data background, instructional background. So you would look then, you wouldn't look for that financial person, you would look for someone that's got that data, someone that's got the instructional background. And the first question I would ask you is, do you have a strong business manager? Because ideally, you want someone who knows enough about finances, enough about instruction, enough about data. But that's hard to find someone that's an expert in all three areas. So your profile report will show, and your survey will show, if your test scores are low, that's going to come up. And so then what we'll do is focus on that instructional piece. Someone that's really had success in their career, maybe they're a director of teacher and learning, maybe they were that data assessment person. So there's ways to, it has to be the right fit for your district and what you're looking for.
So so in your experience, you've been a lot of places, a lot of years, other than test scores, how are you rating, or what else should we be looking at in these superintendents?
Track record. One of the things that we look at is how long were they in their current district, or how long were they in previous districts. If someone is every 2 years switching jobs, not a good sign. We had an internal candidate in one of our last searches that did not list the current superintendent or any board members as a reference. And what does that tell you? So we look at multiple things. We blind call people. So we know if we call their references, they're going to get a glowing recommendation. So we will call people that they don't list. We'll call people from the district that they don't list. If someone...
What are you hoping to hear? Sorry, what are you hoping to hear from those people, though?
Hoping to hear, yeah, it's a great person. I mean, it's in a super job.
I'm going to say you're great, you're nice, what specific...
Would you hire him if you had a superintendent opening, would you hire him? What are the strengths of this person? What are the areas of Where do they have to grow? Are they qualified to be a superintendent? Would they be a good fit to be a superintendent? Have they had any issues with other administrators, with other teachers? Have they had any poor evaluations? Have they ever been disciplined? I mean, the list goes on and on. But if you call someone they list, you know what you're gonna get.
Right.
So we do a lot of blind calls. And we tell people that when we do our Zoom interview, you know, have you talked to your board? Have you told your board you're applying? Because here's what we do, okay? So we will call other people from your district. We can't slate someone if we don't have that true background. We have to have more than just your 3 reference letters or more than just the 3 people you listed as a reference. We have to be able to call other people. And then what we'll encourage districts to do, if you get your finalist, let's say you have 2 really strong candidates, or even 1, we would encourage you to do a site visit to their district to make sure you like what you're seeing. Talk to people from that district where they're coming from. See if they say glowing things, and don't just talk to people that they give you a list of people to talk to. Find a custodian in the hallway, find a secretary, find a student, go have coffee and ask about the superintendent or this person to see what people say about them. It has to be the right fit for your district.
Does having a few or a couple internal candidates impact the number of highly qualified outside people who apply?
It can, yeah, it can, because a lot of times the first question they'll ask is, are there any internal candidates? Yep, so they will ask that question. And some people will say, well, you know what, I'm not even gonna waste my time, because chances are the board is gonna go with this internal person, or they're gonna say, you know what, I'm still gonna throw my name in there. But it can have an impact.
Did anybody else have any questions for Mike?
Probably. Just formulating them. Okay, so you mentioned that if you had 3 candidates, you had to post it. Is that just like a standard Wisconsin rule?
If you have
or
less than 6.
Less than 6.
Yep, it's a state law.
It's a state law.
Yep.
So if we didn't go with a firm and we just applied or did like we can and posted internally, and we got 3 candidates, then we would have to.
Release those 3, if you only have 3 applicants, and those are your finalists.
Yeah.
If requested, you have to release their names.
Okay.
You don't have to release them on your own. But if a local newspaper or TV station will call you up and say, who are your finalists, you have to release their names. And not until the posting closes, and not until you name them finalists.
You had a screen up where you were talking about some individual costs. Can you give us a ballpark, and I think you included this in your written proposal already. Can you give us a ballpark figure of what the total cost is of this if we hired you?
Can you go back to that?
It's at 16,000 plus the 2,000 expenses.
Minus 2,000
Yeah,
if
keep
we
going,
already
keep going.
used
If
the survey.
we use our survey.
Keep going. Keep going. Right there. Okay. So if you, depending on the survey, so let's say you did not take the survey. So your cost would be $14,500 plus $379 to post it in the Wisconsin Leadership Center. I believe the Minnesota is a little bit cheaper than that. So if you posted it in Minnesota, it'd be another probably $300 as well. And then travel not to exceed 2,000. So you're looking at 17,000 somewhere in there without the survey. 18,500 or so with the survey. Again, depending on how much travel I had, how much we did through Zoom. I would probably come to the district about 3 times as normal. A good example, the planning meeting. The planning meeting can be done through Zoom. It literally takes 45 minutes, if that, it will take me 5 hours round trip to drive back and forth, okay? So, and with, I don't even know what the mileage is right now, it keeps going up every day. So you can cut costs by doing things, with Zoom, and not having me in the district as much as, 4 days, I think in the proposal was 4 days is the total for in the district. So,
So does everything go to you then, to your firm, and you put it all together? It doesn't go to us, does it, or Alicia? It would go right to you, and then you bring it to us?
as far as,
Like the,
Applications.
yeah, all the applications.
good question. They would all come to me, and then what happens is, about a week before we present the slate, I get them either to your administrative assistants, and then that person would get them to you, or I would just directly email them to you. Most districts like it, I send them to the district office, and then that one person will email them then to the board members, or make hard copies for the board, whatever the board prefers. So that all comes to me. I write the posting, but you have to approve the posting. So if you just go on the HYA website, you'll see all the postings out there. But I look at, I guess just go to New Richmond, look at what we did. I talked about location with close to the Twin Cities, talked about their, I think, high test scores, talked about positive things about the district. And so that'll be in your posting, but you have to basically say, yep, it's ready to go. And it'll be a Google Doc, and you'll be able to edit it, revise it. We don't post anything until you give us the green light to post. The job will be posted on the HYA website, like I said, the leadership, Wisconsin Leadership, your website, probably the Minnesota Association would be, I would highly recommend that for this one as well. So I will provide you with all the interview questions. We'll have a meeting to discuss the process of the interview. So normally what happens is if you accept 6 in your slate, the board will interview those 6. I usually say don't do it more than 45 minutes. It's usually 2 nights, 3 interviews a night. You don't need to go over 45 minutes. You will know within the first 15 minutes if you like the person or think the person will be a good fit. So then the board will narrow it down to 2 or 3 finalists. Once you get it down to 2 or 3 finalists, and then we would provide each finalist 1 full day in your district. So then what happens is, then you have different meet and greets. The community, parents, group of students, staff, certain times throughout the day, we call them meet and greets, where they would actually meet the candidate, the person would talk about their background, their experience, the group can ask some questions, and then usually what happens, it's a very long day because they're here all day, and then, so let's say you had 3, so they would be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then maybe on Thursday night, the board would meet and interview them again for that second time. So the board does get that one last interview with the 3 finalists or 2 finalists. In the meet and greets, the community, we'll have a form available, and the community would list the strengths of the person, and then what concerns they have about the person. And then that form, we would get that form to the board, so you would be able to see what the staff thought, what the community thought, what the students thought. They don't rank them. This is your hire. But they assist you by giving you can tell when they list all the strengths and what the concerns would be, and you'll see if there's a theme. So that's how you get input from the community, staff, students, business people. They do have a say, and at least they're able to give you input on what they think.
Anything else?
This is kind of probably a silly question. I know that you want us to use your services,
Yep.
and we want to find the best superintendent, but listing the schools that you've used, I mean, do the majority of districts use a firm in a hiring? Or, because you also said when we mentioned internal, then maybe you wouldn't need us. I'm just,
Yep.
out of curiosity, like,
Most districts do use a firm. The real small districts may not use a firm. They'll do it on their own. There are cheaper firms out there, but they won't do the recruiting, or they won't do like the profile report. They won't do some other things that would, separate the other firms. But if you're gonna just do internal, you may not want to open it up. You may just want to bring your internal people in and just talk to your internal people to see, what you think. And the problem with that is, though, it sounds like a good idea, and it is a good idea if you got really, really strong internal people. You're not going to be able to compare them to anyone from the outside unless you do a full-fledged search. So if you do the full-fledged search and they participate, now it's apples to apples, and they're compared to everyone, that has applied, and it's a process. It's a 3 to 4 month process. So Everest was a little bit different because they were actually grooming. They have assistant superintendents, so they were grooming these people, to be a superintendent. So it's a little bit different. Other questions?
We keep talking about the school perception survey. Just to clarify, Mark, the school perception survey that we recently sent out, it did not focus on a superintendent search
No,
at all.
there's some things you can pull off of it, but it's not.
So we're gonna have to survey our community. I mean, if you want that input, we're gonna have to do
have
that.
you ever started out, like, have you ever done the survey and kind of helped a smaller district get started and then kind of let them go? I mean, you said you could be like, with that fee that's listed,
For the survey?
would you be, well, not even just the survey, but would you be willing, as far as maybe if we don't need the whole gamut of things, to kind of individualize
Could.
some of our
We could.
needs?
Yep, we could. Normally, it's the full-fledged search. And what takes time is the focus groups, writing the report. We spend a lot of time doing that, and so.
Could we just pay photocopy fees and get the 5 from New Richmond, 10 minutes away? And
I know.
I could copy them myself, I would stand here and.
We could save on travel costs. They could pay for the hotel rent. We were.
See, well, that's another thing. So what I would try to do, I should have said this earlier, is I would try to coordinate my visits here when I'm in New Richmond. Yeah, they can pay for it.
We're
What's
a
that?
lot further
Yeah,
ahead
this
in
should
the
be done soon
process.
though, I mean, how.
We've got, the focus groups are done, but I'm there next Tuesday. So if I had to do something, next Tuesday or when they start interviewing. Normally, we don't go to the interviews unless the board really wants us to be there. But we provide you all the questions, the procedure, we talk about it, we guide you through everything. Some boards say, you know what, we really want you here. And then what we do, if that's what you're thinking, we'll make sure we save one of those days in the district, so it doesn't cost you anything extra. It's still the same price. But if you start getting 6, 7, 8 days in the district, then it does, the price will go up. But normally, we're in we say in the proposal, it's 4 full days in the district. In a full day, when we do some of these focus groups, we literally have started at 7 in the morning and we've gone till 9 o'clock at night. That's 1 day, okay? So what we'll do is we'll make sure that we save a day for the interviews if you want us here for the interviews. Sometimes you'll want us here for that final interview, that final board interview when you have the 2 or 3 candidates versus the 6 candidates. Because the 6 candidates, you're really screening them. That's your first screen with them. That's not their final interview. You're just trying to, and then some boards will ask us, okay, you've given us 6. who are your top 3 people? And we'll share that with the board. This is your hire, but if you ask that question, we'll share who we feel the top person is, or top 2 or top 3.
Do you track your success rate? So like you go back to the district a year after to see if that
Yep.
superintendent's still there?
Yep, and there's a guarantee in that contract or in our proposal where if they leave within 2 years, we'll do another search for free. So we make sure they honor their first 2-year contract. But we have a very, very high, and I think in the original proposal I sent, I know there's some stats in there from HYA. Their success rate's very, very high with retention and people that stay. Things are so different out there, and you know this, that I was in my last district 15 years. Those days are over. People are, you know, I hate to say this, but the average is like 3.8 to 4 years. But you know, 6, 7, 8 years, and people are looking. This last 3 years have been really hard on everyone, including superintendents. It's been brutal out there, and it's changed. People are retiring younger and younger, and it's just less and less people are going into it. So, and then there is, you know, I stayed 15 years. I probably stayed too long. Sometimes new leadership after 8, 9, 10 years is probably what the district needs. So, I was in Hurley 6 years.
Oh, I saw that. They've changed our mascots and stuff.
I know.
It appears you,
You know, the midgets was a nice. I mean, it was
Yeah.
unique.
That's what it was.
The Hurley midgets.
Yep. And I told a few people that you were the superintendent when my dad was teaching up there. So, we were the midgets, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any further questions for Mike? Thank you so much. for
Oh, you're
coming.
welcome.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Oh, sorry, I can't go in because of the cords.
Do you have any idea when you're gonna make your decision?
Hopefully we have another meeting scheduled
Okay.
next Monday.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that we'll be able to make a decision then.
Yeah. The sooner the better. I'm not just saying that for me, I'm saying for all the firms you interviewed, that
Right.
that's just
Yeah,
very.
it's a season.
Yep, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's a really good memories of early 80s snowmobiling.
I won't ask you where you went in Hurley.
I won't either, not gonna ask you.
I bet I can guess.
I got rid of them dancing shoes. Is there another interview?
Yep, one more.
Job security at night guy's business that only lasted 4 years at a school. Unbelievable. If you weren't selling, you're an idiot. So I'm an idiot, put 38 years in Anderson windows.
Hello. If you want to go, coast. Yeah. I can show you over here if you want to flip over here to the side.
I don't have anything on my.
Okay, so I'll take it off of this. I just wanted to show you what I could get. Everyone's gonna have weird. So I could show you like this stand. Oh, gotcha. So I don't want to move around all over the place. Yeah, so you can kind of see, just stay put, kind of by around that podium, then they can see you. Yeah.
Okay, I will do my best.
And if you need anything from me,
I kind of get a chance to move, yeah. I move around a little bit, but I'll try.
yeah, as long as you're kind of right in here, you're good to go.
Did I just laugh out loud? Oops.
Well, good evening. Again, my name is Sherry Belcher. I was here last fall, so a lot of the faces are looking familiar. So, but I am very pleased and happy to be able to be here tonight to talk about another service that WSB does. So just so you know, you already have the binders that were sent to you with the proposals. So my, I guess, plan for tonight is to just walk through the process. I don't have a sales pitch. That's not my forte, honestly, to be a salesperson. So I just have a list of the activities and a sample calendar. I'll hand those out, and then I'll go back and stay where I need to be on the camera. So I'll just hand these out. Actually, you know what? I'll just let you pass those down. I'll put there one extra that I can pass over here. Okay, thank you. I think I have one extra. Oh, there you go. Yep. Hopefully they go all the way around. I guess as long as I have a minute before we get started, I just want to offer from down the highway my condolences to the board, the community, for your loss last week. Those of you that met me last fall know that I was in Mondovi for 30 plus years, so we have that connection. And I know that Mondovi did the Friday night lights on their football field in honor too, so I know that's a tough thing for the community and for all of you as board members with everything else that's going on. So just passing my condolences again for the struggles you had last week. That's a tough situation, so thank you. And I guess we're just waiting. Should I? You can go ahead. Just go ahead? Okay. So again, coming from WASB, you have a proposal in electronic format and the paper copy. And when I'm done going through what I was planning to go through tonight, obviously open for questions. I understand I have about 30 minutes and then 15 minutes for questions. So I want to make sure to come back and get any questions you might have on that proposal, okay? But I thought the best thing tonight to do is the proposal that you had in front of you gives you all of the sales pitch and gives you background information. So it kind of gave you the what. What I'd like to do tonight is do the how, exactly step by step, that if you hired WSB to help you with this important job that you have of hiring an administrator, when I leave tonight, you will have a very clear understanding of what I will do to help you, what your involvement as board members would be, and the process that we propose. And the biggest piece I'd like to stress is this is your search. Yes, there are some specific pieces that from past practice, from the last 30 years, we know kind of work, but we can customize and make this fit however you would like to fit, because you've got a history here of doing hirings in the past too, and some of you were maybe around for that, and you know what worked well and what the community liked, what their expectations were. So I'm going to walk through this tonight, but I please want you to know that we can customize things also. What I have listed in terms of the sample schedule of activities are the typical ones that we do, okay? So I also provided, because sometimes it's just easier to see, is what the next 3 months would look like with this timeline of activities. Because as board members, you are heavily involved. And as I go through that calendar and these activities, I just want you to know I tried to be aware and cognizant of when you had your meetings so we could combine as many things as we'd like. But this is a draft, and certainly these dates are open for change. But I just wanted you to see how things would work. So, the first thing as a board we would do is have a planning meeting where we would talk about finalizing this schedule. And the tentative date I put on that is for next week, because you do have a work meeting scheduled. The second item on there is the vacancy posting, and I had that listed as coming out next Tuesday. That would be a statewide posting that we do, just letting all of the people know that are signed up on our site that Somerset has an opening. Has some brief information about calendar and when you would like the position to start, when applications be accepted, that kind of thing. So I had next Tuesday as being the posting for that. But if you would decide tonight, at the end of your meeting, make a decision, and if you do have an agenda item to make a decision possibly on a firm, we could even do something like this as early as tomorrow morning and get it out tomorrow. March 15th seems like almost a lifetime away when it's a whole extra week when you see how tight the schedule is going to be here. So we could do something even tomorrow or by the end of the week if you would decide that you wanted to go with WASB. So that second date about post-vacancy notice, that could definitely be changed. One of the things that we would do at that planning meeting is conduct the focus meeting with the board. I do try to condense things as much as I can for the board. One of the important activities that we do is survey your district in focus group format as well as an online survey to find out what you're looking for in your next superintendent. What are the attributes, the skills that are most important to all of you? So focus groups, almost always, there's a board focus group. And then the board, during the planning meeting, we talk about what other groups would you like? Would you like a staff group? Would you like to split the staff focus group into teachers and support staff? Would you like to have a community group? Would you like to have an admin team group? Sit and have that conversation with me. And in those focus groups, we use the same 9 questions. So that when I give a report back to the board, it's the 9 questions and the responses from all the groups. So that you have a very clear sense of what everybody that was interviewed, that participated in the focus groups, has as their highest priorities, okay? So at that planning meeting that right now I have listed as for next Monday, we would do the planning of the schedule, and I would also sit with the board and ask those 9 questions and get your focus group meeting taken care of at the same time. When we talk about focus groups, one of the things that comes up right away is whether you have any internal candidates. Obviously, it would be an unfair advantage for an internal candidate to sit in and hear what everybody else is saying about what they want in their next administrator. So if you wanted an administrative group, it would not include the people who potentially would want to apply. So that's the only comment I make about picking those groups. On the proposal, when I built the budget, I looked at possibly 4 focus groups in addition to the board. So you'll notice that the next item that's on the calendar, I have the planned focus board meeting for the 14th, posting the vacancy on the 15th, opening a community online survey on the 16th, and then having focus groups on the 29th and 30th. You have spring break, the week of the 21st to the 25th on the calendar, so I'm not so sure focus groups that week would have a lot of attendance. You might have a little difficulty finding a lot of people that would want to sit and talk with me when they're on their break. But if that's something, if you've got people that have already stepped forward and said, I'd really like to participate, if that's something we actually could get done that week, we could. But in this particular sample, I listed the 29th or 30th. Up to 4 groups besides the board. I'm willing to do on 2 different nights or afternoons, or if we wanted to get them all done in one day and have the focus groups back to back. Each group usually takes about 45 minutes. It's totally your call on how you'd like to do it. One of the schools I've done a search for, they had just done a search 3 years prior. And so they really didn't want to do a lot of focus groups again, and quite honestly, the only focus group I did was the board. I've had another school that had 4 different focus groups in addition to the board. They split their staff into their teaching staff, support staff, the community, and admin team. So it can vary in however you would like to do it. Any questions on focus groups? How many different ones there would be? The information that is gathered at those meetings, I put together a priority candidate profile. So after meeting with all the groups, and you'll notice the survey closes on March 31st on that calendar. On April 1st, I would like to be able to post out on the WSB site and all the other sites that were listed in the binder that you had. We do have national places that we post. We have statewide places that we post. On April 1st, there would be a candidate profile where I would have gone through all the focus group conversations and the community survey results and created a profile of the priority items that came out of all the discussions here. So when candidates are looking at the Somerset posting, they can read, here's what they are looking for, and decide for themselves also, would this be a good fit, would I be a good fit? So the kind of a tight squeeze to shoot for that April 1st deadline. And the reason for that is we like to post vacancies for 3 to 4 weeks. And if you look at the calendar I gave you, what happens with an April 1st posting, 3 weeks gets us to April 22nd. And that's about the shortest amount of time, really, we'd like to have the posting out for people to be doing their applications. Most of our candidates have already completed a profile online, and it's just a matter of responding and uploading their materials online to your posting. But still, 3 weeks isn't a lot, especially when there's Easter in there and a few other things. So that was the bare minimum I wanted. So it looks like end of March, that's a tight push that week to get all the focus group information and the survey information done. But I would promise you that I would get that done so that that posting could go out by the 1st. Okay? After the posting has been out, our philosophy is that as board members, this is your search. We do not do a pre-screening of any kind of applicants. Anybody that applies online, you as board members will have access on that Friday when the posting closes at the end of the day. You will have access to all of the applications online. I've had a couple of situations where people had difficulty with internet at home, and then I've just made the copies and brought them into school, made the hard copies to make sure that the board members had those application materials. So you will see everyone that applies and all of their materials. That last week of April then, on the 27th, would be the second important board meeting where we would meet, go through those applications. You would determine which people you wanted to bring in for interviews in the first round. The second thing we would do that night is determine some of the interview questions. Along with the applications, you will get a binder, each board member will get a binder like this that has information about first round interview processes and procedures. It has a listing of sample questions that you can pick from, so you don't have to create everything from scratch. If you have some specific questions you'd like, you certainly can, but I found that most board members really appreciate having that list of multiple questions that they can at least have a conversation starter, so they're not creating right from the very beginning. So at that meeting on April 27th, we would go through the applications. We would also determine the questions that were going to be asked. In our process, the first round interviews are completed by the board. By statute, law, if it's more than 5 applicants, that's supposed to remain, those applicants' names are supposed to remain confidential. So that's one of the reasons we have that at a board level meeting. At the end of that night, or 2 nights, we're hoping, obviously the pools, I'm sure you're hearing from other places, the pools right now is limited. But I would hope that we would get, and I would work very hard at getting enough applicants that you could have 5 or 6 applicants in that first round that you could visit with, and have then 2 to 3 that you would invite back for final interviews. And if you're looking at that schedule, board meeting on April 27th, first round of interviews. May is when the board time really kind of gets a little bit tight. You have activities here scheduled, most districts do. May gets really full, but on that first Wednesday and on the third Wednesday, you already have some things on your district calendar. So when I'm looking at 2 nights of interviews, I was looking at Tuesday the 3rd and Thursday then the 5th. So it gets to be a busy week, but having 2 nights planned is helpful. More than 2-3 interviews in one sitting, if you've ever done interviewing, that gets really hard to start remembering who said what, where, and when. It gets to be tiring. So we like to split that up if we possibly can into 2 different sessions. I have tentatively also scheduled, or one thing we would talk about is how the board feels about the traditional press. The traditional practice has been after the second night of interviews, boards would sit and actually determine the finalists that night. And what we found is sometimes that's hard. Again, you've sat a long time. So we could sit and make that decision about finalists on that second night, or my recommendation would be is coming back on Monday the 9th. You already have a work meeting planned. We also would need to look at second round interview questions anyway, and just give you some time to think about your notes and maybe look at making that decision on the 9th. But it's your call. If you finish that second round of interviews and it's clear cut that these are the 2-3 people absolutely that we want to bring back, we can certainly do that. But I want you to know both the first and second round like to give you think time after that. It's not quite like it used to be where everybody sat sometimes till late in the wee hours trying to make a decision. So there's some flexibility built into this. That Monday the 9th then, we'd talk about final round interview questions. During the final round, we also suggest, but it's totally up to you, that there are some other groups that participate in that final round, possibly community open forum, possibly interviews with staff groups. And one of the things I would be doing prior to that work night is contacting and working with the district office in terms of, are there individuals that have been asked or would like to have volunteered to be part of those interview committees, and would have solicited some questions and things from them if there are specific things they'd like to ask, so that as the board at that work night, you would be looking at those questions along with the ones that we provide as samples to determine what you'd like in terms of questions for the final interviews. So looking at that final round then sometime that week of the 8th. Again, having a second night to come back either on the 12th or if you make a decision on the 11th. And then leaving a week grace period in there to do some negotiations with your final candidate, coming up with those final decisions back and forth on what the contract might look like, and hopefully then on the 23rd at your regular board meeting being able to make that final approval of a contract. So again, are all these dates flexible? Yes, but as you can see, if you'd like a decision, which is what I understand by the end of May, so someone can start July 1st, this is kind of the frame you're looking at. My job in all of this is to find out what you want and then do all the legwork for you that you need done. I would take care of making sure that, like I said, the candidate profile got out and got published. I would be working with all of those, meeting with all those focus groups, putting together those summaries. I would be making the contacts with the people that you wanted to invite in for interviews. I would also call those people who were not selected to move on, and take care of all of those communications for you. Also help with any press releases, and work with your district office to get that information out. So that is my scope of duties, okay? So I'm real close, I got 1 minute left in terms of my timeline here. So I know that's quick and an overview, but if nothing else, my hope today was I just wanted you to see how the pieces would fit. Every one of the firms, I'm sure, has a process that they've used that works well for them. If nothing else, if WSB is not who you feel comfortable with working, you've at least got the calendar here that you could start your conversation about how you want this to work, because it is going to be a tight process. So with that, I have some final notes, I guess. I started out talking about, I'm not a salesperson. I got into education to help people. I got into administration to help people. As an administrator at a CISA office, again, it was to help people. So now my role at WSB, I just want to help school boards. I just want to be of service. So I wanted to leave you with something that helped you. And I also have to put in, though, my one little plug. I'm not sure about the other firms, but if you read through our proposal, we're very proud of our 91% retention rate. That when we help districts make a good fit and find a good candidate, that those people stay. They finish their contract and go on and stay longer. But we have a guarantee that if, for some reason, the candidate that would be hired out of this process does not complete their first 2-year contract, not for the terrible issue of someone passing away or something like that, but because they just chose to take another job, that WSB would do the search with my time not being charged again. That there is a guarantee we would not charge you for those consultant times if you found yourself in a position that you needed to do another search within 2 years. So I did want to point that piece out. And then my last little piece is I have spent my life working in Wisconsin and in working in school districts. And I have had the pleasure to work with many, 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 many district administrators and superintendents and school boards. My years in Mondovi, but also my years in CISA 10, working with 7 different school districts and 7 different school boards. I saw a lot of administrators, a lot of school boards, a lot of working situations. My work at CISA 4, 26 different school districts and superintendents and school boards. So I feel like I can have an understanding and sit and have a conversation with you and be very able to listen and hear what it is you want. And then my job is to follow through and do the job that you want and help you in the way that you want. Okay? So, with that, are there any questions on the timeline, the focus group, the survey, the community survey, the binder that you would get? Any of those pieces that you might have questions about? Yes?
How much is the binder?
Pardon me?
How much is the binder?
No, it's included in your...
I'm just wondering if we wanted to have our own committee internally as a board, could we purchase the services of your binder to assist us? Like with, you said you had 9 questions and you have this all laid
Okay.
out. And then,
Oh, that's an interesting question. I've never had anyone ask me that. So the focus group is 9 set questions. The community survey has 7 pre-established questions. 6 of them are preference kinds of items, and then there's 1 demographic question, so that when you get the summary report, in which you will all get copies of all of those pieces too. Those are separate from the binder. The sample questions, the outlines for the people that might be helping with background checks, those kinds of things might be copyrighted in here, so I'd have to call and ask what they'd sell it for. I've never had anybody ask me that.
yeah, I was just wondering, if you have a lot of that done, if it's an option.
I'll have to ask first,
Thank you.
because I honestly never had anybody ask me that. Because, yeah, it is, and it includes things like when you're doing interviews, these are things you can and cannot ask, that kind of thing, which I would work with the interview committees on having those conversations. So again, it's copyrighted material, things that they've put together. So I'd have to just check. If you can buy this just by itself. That's what you're asking,
Yes,
right?
I think so.
I will ask. Other questions about the process itself?
Yeah, well, she kind of talked to it, I was kind of thinking about that. So I've asked the other groups, the internal process. Let's say we have a good, or we have, 1 or 2 or 3 internal candidates.
Yep.
What's your suggestion on handling that? Do you do a process with just them? Do you include focus groups, surveys? How would you suggest working through that?
All right. Again, I understand it's a cost. I mean, there's things about cost things. I understand that piece. I will tell you that having a candidate, an internal candidate, go through the process validates, maybe that's the word, the legitimacy of their having the position. When you skip that process, it can appear from the outside that, oh, they're just being handed this position because they know the board members. That makes it difficult or adds an extra wrinkle of difficulty when the person starts the new job. I mean, they just have to prove that much more, and not that they can't. I mean, that isn't the issue. It's just when you have a candidate internally that rises to the top by going through the process, that legitimizes it.
So even saying you could do a process for the internal candidate where you would go through those steps. You still would say, open it up to external candidates as well and bring the internal candidate.
I would, but again, is it a local choice? And I will be totally frank, honest with you. When I got hired in Mondovi all those years ago, the board only interviewed me. So I'm coming from someone who went through that. I mean, they kept me for 10 years, so I guess it worked out okay. But I also know that walking into that, there's always that conversation about, well, what if there had been somebody out there that had some more experience in this category or that category, and we never even checked. Has it worked out? Have there been districts that did that? Yes. One of the searches I did last year, though, it was an internal candidate, went through the same interview process as everybody else, and got the job. So, but it's your choice. I mean, the people internally that are going to apply, or when they do. And if you're comfortable, I mean, again, I don't know your situation. If you had 2, 3 internal people and you just want to do those 3, you could. That's different than 1 person. I will say that. But again, you're not looking at who all's out there and potentially available either.
Do you ever have people that will say, okay, well, we're gonna just try this on our own, we're gonna try to do like an internal, external weekend search, or wherever we would search normally, and give it 3 weeks, see who we get, and then make a decision?
Have I personally run into
Like,
that? I haven't.
Where people have failed at their own attempt. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we try something on our own, I'm just trying to think of like situations where, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or whenever you were hired as a school board,
They
or
met
not a
with,
school board, a superintendent, they didn't have these types of services available, did they, to
They
seek
did.
out all these candidates?
Yep, they did. And in my particular situation, they met with a WASB person for several weeks, and walked through things, and just ended up didn't open it up. Because WSB searches have been around for over 30 years, so that process would have been available to them. But back to your question about trying it yourself, it's the timeline that concerns me, and I'm just, trying to be helpful here. If you wait another 3-4 weeks, you can see on that calendar where you're bumping to, in terms of timeline.
We also have on, that's not on here, is we have an election that's coming up where 3 of us are either staying or not, right?
Yep.
So we don't know
Yep.
who's gonna be on the board a month from now.
And that's a conversation in that planning meeting, because that happens a lot, just because of where the elections fall. And April and May are common times to be finalizing searches. So, boards have the option to invite people to the closed session if there's a reason, so in one district that I'm working with, they know that they have a person that's gonna be new, because they have someone going off that's not, there's no one else running. So they have the option of inviting that person to the first round interviews, just so that their first meeting isn't literally, that wouldn't happen to this board, but literally in that situation, the first meeting would be approving the contract for somebody they'd never met. So they're trying to accommodate for that. So you can do a couple things looking at that planning meeting on how you wanted to handle that. But that would be my one concern, is just time getting away from you at this point. You can. There's been districts that have handled their own searches. They have. But again, we can is not the same. I mean, again, in the binder, and I'm sure the other firms listed theirs too, all the places that we post, you would not have access to all those places on your own, especially the national ones. And of the searches I did last year, there was an out-of-state candidate that was a finalist in one of the districts, and one of the districts actually hired the out-of-state candidate. So that's the piece you'd be missing a little bit too.
So you have your breakdown of hourly rates, 130 per hour for search coordinator, 75 for a search services assistant, 160 for professional consultation, 110 per hour travel, mileage, and then meals and lodging if needed, but not to exceed 10,400.
Yep.
So what is an average for a district our size? What do you typically see for costs?
It's running around 9,500 to, that 10,000. Now when I put my proposals together, I go on the high end because we put it as not to exceed. Because the last thing I would want is to come back and say, oh, well, you want to do this now, so now I'm going to adjust your contract. It almost always comes in less. But I did the 4 focus groups. I did extra nights for driving, getting here. I added extra time for things so that I wouldn't have to do that. So that would be the max. It would not, it's not going to exceed that. The average is running around the 9,500 though to 10.
On your calendar of your schedule here,
Mhm.
talk about going through all the applications and
Yep.
the board narrowing it down to the 6.
Yep.
Is there any assistance that you provide?
Oh yes, I will participate in that. And in terms of screening ahead of time though, we just strongly feel that you need to see all the applicants and see all the materials. So I would sit at that meeting, and certainly if you had questions or if there were some red flags that popped up to me in terms of the materials, that's my job.
And does
Just to
that
help you
happen
with
in
that.
closed session then, because they're
Evaluations are,
personal
yeah. So
information?
the review of those applications is in closed session, yes. And part of that is the confidentiality. And some applicants, especially at the first round, that needs to remain confidential.
And so do you do any screening of background checking?
Yep, we will do background check in terms of, criminal, licensing, that kind of thing. When you get to your finalists, your 2-3 finalists, we do feel it's important that there's not an intermediary. So one of the things we'll talk about at the planning meeting is which of the board people, 2-3 people want to do the phone calling for the reference check, going back to the employers, looking at the, actually calling the references. And we have forms to help with those phone calls if you haven't done those before, in terms of questions to ask and what to do. But then that would be part of that conversation the night when the final decision is made. Because we bring in the information from the interviews, bring in the information from background checks and the reference checks, and then the committees that you have, the interviewing committees. And again, we will have forms for those groups to fill out in terms of strengths of those candidates that they saw, that they were impressed with, and if there are things that were concerns or questions that they still had. And that's one of the reasons too, we've started to say, do you want some time to review that information instead of deciding that very night? So that's why there's some flexibility built in that calendar. The other thing that we've started to do in a couple situations, and it's your decision, it's part of the planning conversation, is, and it came out of the COVID, but in terms of that community meeting, instead of having an actual community meeting, we've had situations where the 3 candidates would be like interviewed and taped. There'd be like 3-4 questions that they would all each be asked. And that video then is uploaded to your school website with those finalists, and so anybody can watch those candidates respond to those questions. So, and you can get feedback back electronically through that system too. If you didn't want to try having a rotation the night of the day and night of the final interviews. That's something else we would do, but that would be information. Again, you would just get the results maybe that night. And so having a few extra days to think about that is why the calendar is built the way it is. It's a lot to digest in sitting right there,
So if we were looking for a candidate who could help us with our student achievement, is there background checks, is there preliminary things that you will do to assist us in finding the best candidate?
Well, there's 2 things. Number 1, when we do the focus groups, if that comes up as a priority item, that's going to be right in the candidate profile that Somerset is looking for someone with that kind of background. So hopefully it grabbed the attention and eye of people with that kind of background. The other thing is part of their application process, we ask that they write a response to 2 or 3 essay questions that you choose. So one of your questions as part of their application can be, what is your experience and background with increasing student achievement? Where they specifically, candidates would have to answer that as part of their application. So that would help with the screening also.
And then do you do any checking on, for example, the DPI website to verify that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We verify that they're in the positions they say they're in and that they're licensed in the areas they say they're in, and complete that check that way. Is that what you're asking?
I'm even going further, so if they are saying that,
They've done X, Y, and Z?
yeah.
As long as I know that's a specific priority that you want to verify, I have no problem calling and asking and finding out, checking websites, seeing what kind of experience those people actually have with that. But again, not only as part of their application, but that certainly then should be a question that you ask each of the candidates too. Please define, explain to us, give examples of what kind of work you've done in this area, and it's very easy to verify then too, and double check on it.
I have to imagine that that's been a little bit harder with COVID. Being able to answer that question and with all the struggles that all the students and the faculty and staff have had in the last 2 years.
It's interesting, if you go out and look, one of the questions, because you could, on the WSB site you can see, what the postings are that are out there. One of the questions we've started to ask in our essay questions is, because typically you're looking for innovation, innovative skills, creative problem solving is very typical in what you're looking in leadership. And one of our questions is give an example of what you did in terms of innovation or creativity to sustain student achievement during COVID. I mean, that is one of the specific questions we've been asking, because you're not the only ones that have been concerned about student achievement during all of this. So what has this person done to address that concern? And that's been getting some interesting responses to that. Yeah, and I do appreciate the concern for the money saving. I get it. I totally get it. But I also know that board members are busy people. And there's a lot of work that can take off your plate. And with my background and experience, there's just connections of people that I have that I can help you with those things. And that's what I would do.
Because we have full-time jobs in addition to being school members.
And that's the point. I mean, that's why a majority of districts have somebody help them, whether it's WSB or it's any of the other. There's multiple search agencies because there's work to do. I mean, that's just the way it is, because, yeah. And even looking at that calendar, you know, I tried really hard to not have weeks where you had multiple, I mean, can't help it the week of interviews. There's just not much you can do there. But trying to keep things in a schedule that fits in and doesn't make it too hard. And again, spring sports and all those things, I have no idea if that calendar is realistic or not, but at least it's a sample. That's why it's labeled a sample. It gives you an idea. So, and I will, you know, you've got my mind going, Bruce. I will ask if they ever partial out any of this. I've never had anybody ask that before.
That'd be great.
But then,
Right, but then you've got to do the
Someone's
work.
gotta do all the work.
Yeah.
To piggyback on the money question
Yep.
and Bruce's question, does anybody, I mean, with that and the hourly fees, does anybody ever do like a hybrid version of this as far as maybe not doing the full search as your listing, but maybe break down costs or, you know, make sure we're doing our due diligence as a
Yep.
board, but yet maybe cut it down?
Yes, there's a couple of ways. Number one, the focus groups, that's a time-consuming piece. So, like I said, some districts have cut back on the number of focus groups. A lot of the time, again, is, you know, my windshield time, that kind of thing. So if there's some things we could do via Zoom, I mean, I'm more than willing if you're comfortable with that, like the planning meeting next week. You know, if you hired WSB and we actually could get started with some of this planning next week, if you're comfortable with Zoom, that saves my windshield time and mileage time out of that proposal, which, in all honesty, those are huge pieces. They really are. And, you know, we could do a couple of things that way too. That would cut out some money.
I guess, while we're sitting here, like a follow-up thing is just, you know, legally, I think that's where I keep hearing, and maybe that's to scare us, but we keep hearing we could, you know, be crossing the line or breaking certain laws or something before you ask certain questions or do things certain ways. So from that end, I guess using the services you guys provide to make sure that doesn't happen. And again, if that's needed, you're not needed in person for a lot of that. That's more of a review of the questions that we'd come up with, or I don't know, those focus groups, that type of thing.
I mean, and that's something I can take a look at that. I mean, when you look at that schedule, the planning meeting for, you know, in your focus meeting, the reviewing the apps could be done online. I could be here to participate in that and not have that, because it's an hour and a half for me to get here. That's 3 hours. So you can do the math on that pretty quickly. That's 3 hours of time that wouldn't be if we did some of that Zoom. I would, in all honesty, though, you know, we did interviewing via Zoom, you know, during COVID. That, I will just be honest, if I'm hired for this, I really do want to be here in person for the interviews. You just don't get a sense for the candidates quite the same. Plus, on that final interview, there'd be, you know, other groups, and I would like to meet with those groups to talk about, you know, these are the things. Reminder, we'll give them stuff ahead of time too, but, you know, stick to the script. Don't get off on a tangent here. So that there's just things for that piece that I would like to be here for interviews. But some of these work meetings, if you're comfortable with Zoom, I'm comfortable with not driving for those.
And just to make it clear to the public, Cheryl's been mentioning WASB, it's the Wisconsin Association of School
Oh, yeah,
Boards.
thank you.
A very reputable group, and as you've been saying, that we already contract with.
Yeah,
to
you are
get-
members, yep.
And you've said that that WASB's been involved in doing this for 30 years.
Over 30 years. The last 5 years, we've done over 70 searches. One of the searches I did last year was Abbotsford, and they're one of the groups that was quoted. That's something else if you would, I mean, I helped with Spring Valley's last year, and I helped with Thorpe's last year, so if you wanted some more reference materials from those board presidents. One thing I will say that's also included in that contract is once your new superintendent is hired, there is an evening, a workshop where we would sit down and I would help facilitate that with talking about goals and setting up that first year for some success. And I was pretty tickled last year that 2 of my 3 districts asked me to come back and do that with them. So I got to see the new soup with their new board, and we got to do some planning and talking together. And that's included in the proposal, in that sum. So there's no additional charge for that. So, and it'd be very similar to those of you that were here in the fall. We talked about goals and some things, but this would be with your new superintendent. So yes, Wisconsin Association of School Boards is a group that you are members of, and we are here to that's our only function is to support you. So hiring superintendent's your main priority job, so that's obviously something we want to go well, and then we're here to support however we can as you have that working relationship too. So we don't go away, we're here if you want us to help you out. Trying to think if there was anything else I meant to.
Any questions? Sherry, anything else?
Talk about you. Anybody?
Thank you so much for coming in.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally,
Appreciate your
absolutely.
time.
We're actually right on time, so that's even better yet. Sometimes I have a tendency to talk too much, so glad to hear. So I hope I get the opportunity to come back, and then otherwise, I totally wish you the best of success, however you decide to do your search. You're a thoughtful group. I'm sure you'll make the best decision for your community. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's been a long night. And as Cheryl said, sometimes it's helpful to have some reflection time. So unless there's someone who feels strongly that we should have a discussion and continue this process tonight, how would you feel about, well, what's your preference? Do you want to have some more discussion tonight, or would you like to wait until next Monday? Or we could have another special session this week. What is the preference of the board?
I would like to wait. I was gonna suggest the same thing. I think I just need to process what I heard. I don't wanna wait too long, so I would be open to it this week, but if it has to wait till Monday, I'd be ready by Monday to make a decision.
Okay, Marge, what do you think?
Yeah, same. I'd be ready by Monday. I don't know what other nights this week.
Unless we can do something.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that there was a lot. I'm also really happy, I mean, with some of the emails and different comments and stuff, I think, coming in. So I think as even our public comment, just not rushing, I feel like it's good to think through this and to make sure before we do this as an action item.
So are you good with Monday, or do you think? we
I'm
need-
good with Monday.
Sheree, what
One
are you
week.
thinking?
Absolutely Monday or, yeah. We just got another email tonight, as we were just 2 minutes ago. I think our district is going to have a lot of input that we need to really be navigating as well and getting feedback before we make any type of decision. So I would encourage everybody, please email and give your thoughts, and Monday we could move forward with what kind of decision.
Michelle?
Yeah, I might have a conflict on Monday, I'm not sure yet, but I think what's hard for me is that I look at this entire board and I'm trying to figure out what exactly are we looking for. Are we looking for a certain number of applicants to make us feel good about who we're gonna pick, how we're gonna move forward? I don't see a policy on you have to have 3 applicants in order to say justify a good process, right? So I don't see that, but I kind of want to have a better understanding as to what we're looking for. And it might be a little bit different, which is fine. I know Mark Biesick indicated that, he's usually typically not a part of these processes, but he's not going anywhere else. And I don't know if there's a way to help him, have him be a part of this process, since he is a superintendent and he kind of knows the ropes and has worked with these associations. I'd really like to have his input, and I'd like to have him be a part of the process, if he could be. I've spoke to other school board members from different school districts and just asked them, hey, what do you do with your superintendents? How do you hire them? Where are you getting your interview questions from? And they're looking at that and researching it and trying to get back to me. But I've looked at all of these emails coming in, and I see, don't waste the money, don't do this. I like the legal aspect of it, let's make sure we're asking the right questions, let's make sure, we're not stepping out of line by something inappropriate. So I like that. That's what I'm thinking of right now, as we're going through this process, listening to those presentations. You look at internal versus external. There are a lot of benefits for internal. There are some benefits for external. We're also in the middle of a referendum, right? Or we're wanting to propose a referendum for facilities. Who's going to know that? Is that going to be somebody who's working in the building every day? Somebody who's external coming in has to learn all of that? What is our goal? So I look at all of this, and it's like, I hate to waste time if it doesn't need to be wasted. I hate to waste money if it doesn't need to be wasted, especially with all of these emails coming in. So, and the support that is out there to maybe come up with a plan. Are we looking at 3? What are we looking at? I have no idea. So, I don't know if I can be here on Monday because we might have a conflict in the schedule. I'll try to be, but if there's anything that I can do to input prior to that or try to log in at some point, I can try to do that too.
Is it possible to post it internally just now? Put it out there and see what we've got before we commit to anything else?
It seemed, I don't know the answer to that. It seemed like from what we heard from these 3 companies that they prefer not to post until we are, because the applications go to them. I mean, we could, but then we may be repetitious in what we end up doing.
The problem that I have is I heard from each one of these 3 that said a process validates the whole selection. And if we have an internal candidate that stands out on top, I think it's a disservice to that person if we don't do a process. And at the same time, I think that in my opinion, we need some guidance. Now, several of these firms said, hey, we could scale back, because I think we need some guidance when it comes to interview questions and the process, because this is something I don't want to screw up. I don't want to screw it up for the internal candidate, if they're the best. I don't want to screw it up for the community. I get the cost, and that's what I want to really process, because I think that we have to spend a little bit of money in order to make sure it's done right. But at the same time, I see where you're coming from, and I think, okay, if there's a way to at least figure out who those internal candidates are ahead of time, yeah, like maybe we could really cut some money off. And that's what I don't know. I don't know what that process is. So I hear what you're saying, but I think there's value in using some part of a.
Well, and maybe it's a hybrid of that with the binder.
Right.
Well, this idea, you know?
I mean,
like-
and what's this last lady's name? Cheryl. She gave an example of how she was the only applicant and interviewed and was hired. So she's seen it kind of all from one angle, from one end to the other, as far as what do you guys want? And so like when they keep asking, what do you guys want? Well, how do we know what we want? You know, we haven't really talked about what are we looking for? Are we looking for 3? Do we want 3 solid candidates to be presented so we're doing the right thing? Or is it 1? And what are we looking for?
I think we have to identify what is it that we're looking for. Take the number out of there. What is it that we want?
That's
And,
yeah.
and can an internal candidate fill that need and take us to where we want to go? I don't think it matters how many we want. So I hate to rush to say, let's just post it internally, because we don't even know what we truly want yet.
Well, and to piggyback on that, the thing that I've heard so much in the last year from our community is that they want to be heard, they want to have a voice. And if that's something that I think is really wanted, then we need to do that as a district. But I don't think, as a board, but I don't know if we can necessarily do that without doing a survey or having those groups come together.
And I'm reading every email that comes in, and there's been a lot that have come in today, and I'm responding to every single one of them because that's valuable information. I don't work in these buildings every day. I've never hired a superintendent. So this is the feedback and the guidance that's just starting us. So I think we need to figure out what we want.
And that's the purpose
Figure out
of
how we get
the.
And not just we, not just us in this, because
This
there's
community.
so many more people that make this.
And when you look at our board, then the huge turnover that we've had, I think it's very important that we have some guidance here, some expertise in assisting us.
I don't think it's a waste of money to put it into getting a good superintendent, a qualified candidate.
It's one of the most important.
We don't know who that will be, but I don't
I'm
think it's
just
a waste of
listening
money
to,
to do that.
I'm repeating what I'm hearing, right? That's what people don't want, money wasted.
It's
If
not
something
money
is
wasted.
sitting right in front of them, right? If I were gonna use the money, I wanna use it wisely, and I'm not saying no to that 100%, I'm just saying, I have a hard time making a decision on this, because I have not heard what we're looking for. As a board, what do we want? Yes, I mean, I hear the questions about student achievement. Everybody wants that. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want high student achievement? I think that's why kids go to school, right? To get an education, and we want them to do well. So I don't know. I struggle with answering this because I'm not certain what we as a board, what are we trying to achieve? Do we want a certain number of applicants? Do we want that?
I think Matt answered that already. It's not that we're looking for a number, it's going through the process and identifying the characteristics, the skills of who we want to hire so that they can provide the leadership that our district, that will benefit our district.
And I thought, we weren't gonna do this today, but here we go. So I thought the school exec connect, she stood out because she talked about doing some hybrid stuff and helping us figure that out. You know, if you look at other government agencies and how they hire, a lot of them do internal processes, but they typically use a firm of some sort to help figure out what do we want, and maybe that's all we need from her, and then we can say, you know what, we're done. HYA, I thought he talked about a lot of good stuff. The only thing that kind of pushed me away is, well, we can get you the candidates from New Richmond. Well, that's not what I'm looking for. You know, I don't want that. But at the same time, with WASB, I think there's a lot of work that's going to fall back on us. And what I don't want to happen is one person on this board takes over the majority of phone calls and collecting, because that starts to skew or potentially skew the data. And again, even for an internal candidate, does that at some point start to invalidate their success? So I feel like WASB didn't have quite enough support. They're there for support, but a lot of it's going to fall on us. HYA, I just don't know if that's right, because they're going to bring us candidates, but that's not necessarily what we want. So I thought the school executive connect, if she's willing to dial back the services, that was kind of where thoughts were landing, because I would like some guidance in figuring out what is it that we want in a superintendent. Once we decide that, we can go to the next step.
Wasn't she one though that wasn't in favor of that?
She did talk about dialing back if we did it internal. She was the first
Okay.
one.
Okay.
So
And the good thing is it's on video, so we can go back.
Yeah, you can.
I think that's what I heard.
So I was listening to all of them, and, you know, they all kind of said they would maybe possibly do some type of hybrid, and I would hope they would respond to either, you know, Alicia or you, or if you send that out, kind of what a hybrid model would look like, if they would give us this packet, or they would say, hey, break out their services a little bit more, so that if we do that, you know, this is what your board's looking for, or the focus groups are this, or the survey is this. But then also, within the next week before we make our decision, my other thought is that we almost have our own committee, and we do it internally with their hybrid model. That, and maybe it is a board meeting, but is there a hybrid committee that we use to select this person by some direction and some information? They obviously have 100 questions or 30 questions, so we have a set amount. Hey, we're looking at a couple $1,000s. Can you help us out here? Just give us I mean, she gave us a great outline of a timeline of what we need to follow. So can we use her timeline with, okay, we gotta meet with focus groups. So, you know, we're working, we're gonna set it up because we feel it's important, and if we are listening to these people from the community saying, hey, we don't want you to spend that money. Well, you know what, school board, we're elected by them. We gotta earn our paycheck here. Let's, our big paycheck. But, you know, we have to do this work. I mean, this is the most important thing that we do. And, you know, if they're asking us not to spend it and they're gonna trust us and the services, we're, okay, then you know what, we're gonna do our best with our full-time job, and we're gonna do our best to reach out to our internal candidates. But, you know what, let's see what kind of feedback we get, and then we'll find out if we know what we want. Okay, these are the things we're looking for. I mean, we got a whole bunch of emails saying, these are what they like, and this is what is successful so far, but I know your kids are in the school, you know what you want out of them. You know, we're involved, we're in the community, we know what we want out of this community. So, I mean, our voices are important too. I mean, we are elected to be here, and I know we're out, people should be reaching out to us, we can reach out. I mean, let's do our due diligence, I guess, now until next Monday and see what we come up with, maybe on our own, and maybe we come up with 5, 6 things on our own, that this is what, I mean, we all know what we want to see in a superintendent.
Yeah, I like that. I like each of us come to the table with what it is we want.
Right.
And we compile a list.
I mean, it's a work session, you know, and I hear it, but right now I'm hearing, you know, $10,000 is $10,000 to pick somebody. I mean, it's a minuscule percentage, but it's still money that we can put in to our district. And you know what? If we want to spend it, if they don't want to spend it this way, you know what? Okay, we hear you. We're going to come up with the best thing that we.
So what if we schedule a listening session prior to our meeting on Monday? do that hour-long listening session beforehand and see what the community is saying. I mean, I'm hoping we'll get more feedback. I love these emails that we're getting in. I want to hear both sides of everything though, you know, so if somebody has, you know, positive or negative feedback or really has, you know, opinions.
I think we need to be careful about a public listening session and talking about individuals and invading their right
Sure.
to
Well, not
privacy.
necessarily about the individuals, but about hiring a firm and what exactly, if they've listened to this presentation, they can come back and say, well, this is what we want in a school board member.
Yeah.
What are the
That's
choices? What are the?
different, but we
Right.
have to be
Well, why don't-
prepared
we
to
could
make
do that.
sure that we don't get into privacy legal issues.
Can all board members be present though for that
For a
listening
listening
session?
session?
Or does it
we-
would have to
Well,
start
that
at
would be
the meeting time?
The meeting at the start, and we have to
we
Just allow
could
that,
have a special session, as long as
which I think is
it's,
important.
as long as it's posted as a meeting, we can all be there.
And we just basically call it a listening session for 50 minutes, and it's, is it a,
Or as long as you want to talk.
is it a, let's see, is it like public comment only on there?
How do you want to do it?
So, I mean,
Well,
Mark,
we
what have
just
you
do it-
seen? Anything like this? You're very quiet.
I have to be, you know. I think you really gotta look at the challenges that we're gonna be facing over the next year or two, which some of them you don't know yet, that may develop, it may, I don't wanna say skew anything, but I just think, you gotta take your time on this, because this is the biggest job you're gonna have. And, you know, 10,000 on a search, if it's going to create balance and you're comfortable doing it, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I think there's some extenuating things that might happen in the next couple of weeks that, you know, may change the direction. And I'm just not at liberty right now
So
to
we're
talk in
pushing,
public on that, so.
we're pushing for this July timeframe, but we could have a interim superintendent, or you would have agreed to stay until November. So truly, you have agreed to stay until November.
Why does it have to be done before next Monday then?
Well, so that's what I'm wondering is, you know, can we take some time over the next month or whatever and really evaluate what this looks like and have maybe 2 listening sessions or whatnot with the community or, you know, getting the feedback and then start this calendar with whatever that may be. We have our bases covered. We do.
And we're doing our due diligence as a board.
And we're not rushing anything and we really
You
continue.
know, if you're not going to have a listening session, which I
Yeah.
pluses and minuses to that at this point in time, which just suggests maybe we have a closed session right before our meeting Monday to have a discussion amongst us on some things. Which
So
may-
how early are you available? 5 or 5:30? The regular meeting starts at 6:30.
6:30?
Or I'm 6, I'm sorry, 6.
I would be available earlier. I
Oh.
just, I believe, I mean, I might be available all through
Yeah,
the entire
okay.
thing. But 5 o'clock, 5:30 would work for me.
5:30 is what it earliest for me.
5:30 is as early as you can do?
Yeah.
Okay, so, closed session discussion at 5:30 on Monday. And, we'll move forward from that. I'll make a motion then that we have because I want this all documented. I'm gonna make a motion then that we have a closed session next Monday at 5:30 for further discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
So is that closed session about this?
that will be part of it, but if it's a closed session, then there can be more specific.
We'll figure out what the verbiage is on that.
Okay, I just, yeah, wanna make sure.
So that we're not violating any privacy
Right.
laws.
Cause I, but I still think on the agenda,
Yes,
this needs to be,
yes,
okay.
yes.
I just think it'll shape your direction a little better.
I still think between now and then, we can come up with what we identify are things from our presentations that stood out to us, that would be important
For that meeting time.
for that, yes, for that agenda.
And further discuss a possible listening session, but not have to necessarily push it next Monday.
Right, and
Right.
not necessarily have to make a decision if we're moving forward with one of these three companies as well. We have the ability to navigate what our needs are gonna be and how that's gonna work, right?
Well, the board has the right to make whatever decision it wants, yeah.
So no listening session, just public comment, if people wanna come talk and give their own thoughts.
At the regular.
At the regular
meeting.
meeting.
At
So
6
that was right at
o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Yep.
At 6 o'clock, and our policy is 20 minutes total. Are we going to,
In my opinion, I think if there's a line of people, I think we should listen to
Take
them. So I think that one should be, we should decide when the time comes. Yeah, if people wanna talk
This
and
is
give their
important.
opinion, yeah, this is important, and I think we should afford the time.
And we'll have a listening session again at the end of March, that's already scheduled.
They should just bring us Jimmy John's though, if they're gonna all line up outside.
all right, so we have a motion on the table and a second. Alicia, you've got it? All right, so any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Then I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion by Matt, second by Bruce. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned at 8:40. Thank you.